A week had passed since Anthony and his muscleheads returned from the floating island. Life at the academy had gone back to its usual, boring loop: classes, training, missions, sleep, reading, repeat. Anthony rolled out of bed, went through his usual morning routine, and stepped out of his room. Today, he planned to do something different. He was finally going to take a mission. Ever since coming to the academy domain, he had never taken a single one. Not because he couldn't, but because he didn't see the point. Why run around risking his life when he could lie down, place bets, and earn money with barely any effort? He strolled through the academy like always and eventually arrived at the mission hall, moving as if he'd been there 100 times before. Inside, students moved around, checking the glowing screens and discussing missions. Anthony walked up to a clerk's desk. "Hello, I want to take a mission." The clerk, busy typing on her computer, didn't even look up. She waved her hand, and a holographic display popped up in front of Anthony. "This is the list of all available missions. Pick one, and I'll register it." The academy didn't bother dividing missions by difficulty. Everything was lumped together. Each mission clearly stated its minimum requirements, like S rank only or higher, but the academy never stopped anyone from courting death. If a B ranker chose a mission that clearly required an S rank and died out there, that was their own problem. The academy didn't raise idiots or people who overestimated themselves. Of course, they would still investigate the cause of death. If it was a normal death, the student would simply be added to the long list of arrogant corpses. If something abnormal was involved, the academy would retaliate, no matter who was responsible. Because of that, it was an unspoken rule. You didn't touch academy students while they were inside the academy domain or during the school term. Anthony scrolled lazily through the list, but nothing caught his eye. To him, these were garbage missions. To most people, they were death flags. "Do you have any better missions? I didn't see anything I like." He glanced at the clerk. She still hadn't looked away from her screen. "Name, year, class, year, rank," she replied flatly. "Null Anthony, first year, S-class, first rank." Her fingers froze over the keyboard. Her eyes widened as she slowly looked up at his face. Who didn't know Anthony? The written exam record breaker. Ridiculous talent. Absurd manazone. The famously lazy first ranker. The guy who shattered the academy cafeteria, spending record by more than 2 million points. He had never taken a mission, yet somehow always seemed to be the richest. There wasn't a single person in the entire academy who hadn't heard the name Null Anthony, the demon nemesis. Of course, there were still haters. People who insisted his reputation was exaggerated, who refused to believe the videos online and convinced themselves it was all hype. The academy accepted around 1,000 students each year, and the graduation requirement was SS rank. But in reality, very few actually made it to graduation. Having even a double-digit number of graduates was considered a miracle. Normally, only 3 to 5 students managed to graduate from Alumni Peak Academy each cycle. Once the third year ended, if you hadn't reached SS rank, you were out. No certificate, no title of graduate. That was how brutal Cultivation was. Comparing Anthony's generation to others was meaningless. They were in a league of their own. Even students who got kicked out kept everything they had learned. The education, the techniques, the insight they gained would still follow them and the people around them for a long time. This was why parents still sent their children here, even knowing they might never graduate. Just surviving until the end of the third year was already an achievement that opened doors. Add to that the connections made inside the academy, and it was still a huge advantage. Back in the mission hall, the clerk stared into Anthony's blue eyes and blanked out for a moment before snapping back to reality about 10 seconds later. "With your fame and strength, you do qualify for better missions," she admitted. She waved her hand again. The display in front of Anthony shifted from bright blue to blood red, exuding an ominous warning. The text appeared in black, enhancing that oppressive feeling. This list contained the top 10 impossible missions. Of course, they weren't truly impossible. If they were, they wouldn't be listed at all. They were called impossible because of their brutal requirements. Only people capable of fighting across ranks were even allowed to touch them. Even the weakest mission on the list, ranked 10th, required at least SSS level battle power. It was ridiculous. The Academy's graduation requirement was SS, yet they casually issued missions requiring SSS as a minimum. The impossible mission list was updated over time. One every few years, some monster of a student would actually complete 1 or 2 missions, proving they could fight far above their rank. 2. If a mission stayed up too long, the Academy might complete it themselves, or an outside guild or organization would take it and clear it first. But in all the Academy's history, no one had ever completed missions ranked 5th to 1st. Those who attempted them either died or barely survived by burning through all their life-saving treasures. The higher the rank on that list, the more lives it demanded. The top 5 had remained untouched, towering over generations, feeding on talented students' corpses. Anthony's father had once challenged every mission from 10th to 1st. He was a battle maniac. There was no way he'd ignore the impossible list. As long as the Academy officially posted a mission, he believed it was theoretically doable. Null Michael cleared the missions from 10th to 6th on his own. Each one was brutally difficult. He always came back half dead, hanging on by a thread. But for a battle maniac, every fight on the brink of death only tempered him further. Walking that thin line between life and death was a cheat of its own. Even so, Null Michael still failed the 5th-ranked mission and would have died if his father, Null Collins, hadn't intervened. Knowing firsthand how deadly the impossible missions were, Null Collins refused to let his son throw his life away. And really, who better than a father to drag a battle maniac back from the edge? Anthony scanned the list with his usual blank expression. The clerk quietly watched him, curious to see which mission he would choose. His gaze paused on the very first mission on the list. First mission, excursion. Details: escort goods belonging to the Norca organization from City M to City Q. Requirements: master rank combat prowess. Payment: 100 million Academy points. That was all. No extra notes. No warnings. No fine print. Just enough for the employee to know their job. It didn't even say what level of master rank they were expecting. Everything about it screamed death flag. But the reward, 100 million points. Anthony didn't even want to imagine what that amount looked like. He didn't feel greedy, exactly. But he wanted it. Even with how absurdly rich he already was, and even with his system capable of giving him almost anything, there was one simple problem. System points couldn't be converted into Academy points. And this was the kind of number students were never meant to touch. Only professors and people who had stayed in the Academy for many years had this level of points. Anthony knew he could never earn that much through gambling, regular missions, or any normal route. The Academy was confident placing that reward there because they understood what it represented. Impossibility. "I'll take the rank 1 mission," Anthony said, turning to the clerk and meeting her eyes. The clerk froze, stunned all over again. She knew how strong Anthony was, or at least she thought she did. She had expected him to start from the bottom of the list, maybe accept the 10th or the 9th-ranked mission, clear a few, and slowly work his way up. To her, choosing the 1st-ranked mission right away was nothing but overconfidence. Many others had thought the same way. Many geniuses had lost their lives to these missions. There had even been petitions demanding that the Academy remove the impossible mission list. But the Academy never forced anyone to take them. They didn't pressure students. They didn't beg for volunteers. You choose it, you face the consequences. That was the rule. In the clerk's eyes, Anthony had just signed his death warrant. She had held this job in a mission hall for over a century. She had seen people die on the simplest missions, like herb collection and basic escorts. Now the greatest genius of his generation was heading straight into an impossible mission. She hesitated, then tried to offer advice, even though it wasn't really her place. I think you should try the lower ones first. Test the waters before moving up." Anthony simply stared at her for a moment, then shook his head. That alone was enough of an answer. The clerk could only sigh at the thought of losing yet another genius. In her mind, he was already as good as dead. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with a smoothness that came from decades of experience. She printed out a paper slip and handed it to him. It served as a mission ID and contained the time and location of the rendezvous point. Anthony glanced at it. The mission would begin in 2 days. After those 2 days, it would disappear from the impossible mission list, whether he showed up or not. "Thank you," Anthony said with a nod. He turned around and left, heading back to his room. On the way, he sent one of his clones to attend the classes in his place. There was no way he was going to sit through hours of boredom right now. The 2 days passed quickly, silent and sharp like an assassin's blade. In that time, the news spread. There was no way to hide it. The impossible mission list was something everyone occasionally checked for fun or curiosity. The moment Anthony's name was tied to the first-ranked mission, the entire academy shook. Taking a first-rank impossible mission was no different from sending a formal invitation to the Grim Reaper. People mocked him, saying he had let his fame get to his head and grown arrogant. Others sighed and mourned the death of the academy's most handsome genius, even before he had left the academy domain. Anthony didn't react. He didn't bother addressing the rumors. There was no need. For every person who called him prideful and reckless, there were others who believed in him. His subordinates didn't doubt him for a second. To them, Anthony coming back alive was a matter of fact, not hope. Brian and the Titan brothers, however, weren't so calm. They had become close to Anthony. The thought of him dying out there didn't sit well with them. They tried to persuade him to change missions, to pick something lower ranked first. Anthony refused. Everyone in the top 20 believed that once they reached the 3rd year, or maybe even earlier, they'd at least be able to clear the 10th ranked mission on the impossible list. But anything above the 6th rank? That was something to think about carefully when the time came. They all knew the stories behind those missions and the lies they claimed. Anthony, on the other hand, was done thinking. He had already prepared everything he needed for his mission, which wasn't much, since Anthony was the type who stayed prepared. He stepped out of his room and walked toward the academy gate. Students lined his path, staring at him with complicated expressions. Many looked at him with pity and sadness, especially the girls. He gave them a small smile as he passed, which only made some of them tear up more. In their hearts, this was the last time they would ever see him. At the gate, Anthony paused and looked out at the horizon, then back at the academy domain behind him. He turned toward the crowd that had followed to see him off. With a slightly arrogant tone, he said, "There's no need to be sad. I'll be back. After all, I'm heaven's illegitimate child." Then Anthony rose gently into the air and shot off into the distant sky with a thunderous boom. Dean's office. So he's left. Another one chasing an impossible mission. The dean leaned back and shook his head. He pulled out a circular device and tapped it, connecting to someone. A moment later, Noel Collins' face appeared as a hologram above the device. Well, the slaughterer contacting me first. That's rare. What do you want?" Noel Collins asked with a faint smile. The dean smiled back, but his smile had a hint of mischief to it. "Your grandson has accepted an impossible mission." The words dropped like a bomb. Silence swallowed the room. Even a pin falling would have sounded like an explosion. After a brief pause, Noel Collins finally asked the only question that mattered. "What rank?" "First rank," the dean replied, his grin turning a bit wicked. Noel Collins went quiet. He had almost lost his son to the 5th-ranked mission. Now his grandson was going straight for the 1st. Both of them were trying to dance with death. Noel Collins didn't ask anything else. He simply cut the connection, leaving the dean alone in his office.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
The battlefield. Collins, Irene, Mitchell, Michael all sat together as a loud silence descended upon the building they were sitting in. They had been at the battlefield since Anthony left. Even the butler was here at the battlefield attending there to needs whenever they came back from their slaughter. They had all heard the call Collins had with the dean. As they are one big family, they hardly hide anything from one another. Even the butler, since he is tied by a man of contract. Has my son finally become arrogant and overestimated himself? Michael said with a smile, Although he would scold his son for picking the rank 1 mission, he still felt happy in his heart for the courage. Sigh. Anthony has always been mature since he was born. I guess growing up we must all at least court death once. Mitchell said with a sigh. Everyone present here has eaten the fruit Anthony brought. Not only Anthony's parents. He later gave some to Michael for his grandparents as he couldn't leave them out. And right now, they were all stronger than they once were and still growing at faster speed, like they had a low cultivation as they couldn't absorb the essence of the fruit in one go with their weak physique. So right now, they all still battle with their previous strength before they ate the fruit. Their new strength is a trump card for any trouble to come. There was no way they would break through and just announce it. People made announcements when they enter a new major realm, but don't speak on the minor realm at all. But some still don't make announcements when they enter a major realm. That would be another trump card for them. The family didn't ask where Anthony got such a fruit and didn't bother asking or investigating. Such things could lead to war. Michael nearly cried when Anthony gave him a fruit to give to his grandparents. Michael thought that with his enhanced talents, physique, skills, and everything, he was finally one step closer to catching up with his father Collins, as this has always been his goal. But reality seems to disagree with him. Even if they had eaten the fruit, some might speculate they had more in their hands. Where is he right now? Irene's voice sounded as she looked at her husband Collins. The slaughterer said Anthony just left the Academy domain. He also gave me information on where he would be arriving. I think we should just follow him to his mission location and not just wait for him there. What if one of the families or demons in the Forsaken cult make a move on him? Mitchell said immediately. I also agree. Although I believe he should come face to face with death once or twice to improve, we should also be there just in case of certain death, just like when I faced the 5th mission. Michael said with a frown. Collins and Irene both nodded as they understood Michael and Mitchell's point of view. Let's go, Michael and Mitchell said at the same time as they both stood up. They looked at each other with a smile. You have a way to locate our son? Mitchell asked her husband. Of course I do. I left a sword and tin in his body, just in case I needed to track him. With the way Anthony has been disappearing and appearing whenever he wanted, I couldn't just let him go out like that. So without restricting his freedom, I planted a sword and tin in him. Michelle nodded as he too had left a mark on Anthony since the day he was born. Imagine giving birth and marking your child on the first day of his birth. That was how hardcore this world was. She did it just in case someone came to kidnap her baby or harm him. She would know right away and arrive immediately. Many people have lost their children like this, some not even a day after birth, some even during birth. So whenever Anthony left and came back as he wished, she didn't complain as her mark remained in place firmly. But Michael only planted his own mark after seeing Anthony's continuous spatial movements. Of course, Anthony has sensed such mark and sword intent. There was no way his physique would allow such things to continue residing in and on his body. But Anthony left it in place and didn't remove it or say anything about it, as removing it would alert both of his parents. His all-seeing eyes could even see such things. When someone ascends and steps into a new realm, they are automatically healed of all injuries and negative status effect, and anything that is harmful or harms the body. This is the heaven's way of congratulating everyone. Anthony's curse would be removed if he stepped into the E rank from the F rank, but his talent curse won't allow such things to happen. So even without the system, his family could just cultivate him like a pig, and he would step into the E rank, thereby removing the curse. This was the original path I wanted to follow when I started writing, but just dropped the idea immediately. So people who curse people usually use a strong curse with immediate or outrageous effects, leaving you no time or even chance to cultivate or even break through. But there is also a minor flaw or loophole during ascension, which people didn't know about. When you break through, you get healed and saved from everything harmful that is hurting you. But what if something inside your body isn't harmful, yet and still in a dormant state? Just like the sword intent inside Anthony's body, it could be harmful but has done 0 damages till now because it hasn't been activated by Michael. All Michael has to do is snap his finger or even with just a thought, and Anthony would explode like a balloon. But the sword intent is just dormant, neither obstructing the body or slowing down anything. It just stays there doing nothing. Just like Mitchell's mark on Anthony's body. Since these two things haven't caused any harm to Anthony at least once, and it just stayed there, it wasn't harmful and something needed to be removed according to the heavenly will. But if the sword intent has harmed even a single cell or hair, then went dormant again, the heavens would remove it during ascension. As something dormant could be good or bad, the heavenly will can't do anything against it. Of course, the heavenly will know if it would be harmful to you, but it won't bother to remove it, as it wasn't here to take care of you like a baby. It was here to remove everything currently harming or has caused harm, not the one that would harm you in the future. So anything that isn't causing harm in any way is left alone. I wonder what a lot of people would do with this information if they got hold of it. The heavenly will is the will of the heaven. Michael just raised his index finger and sword intent covered it instantly. Then he swiped in a straight line in front of him in empty space. Then space tore apart easily without any chance of resisting. Then he stepped into it with his family following behind him. They were heading directly to Anthony's current location. As I went on my courting death journey, Anthony thought as he moved with a smile. Even if something unexpected happens, his family was here to save him. After flying for another 30 minutes, he arrived at the supposed gathering location, which was a restaurant. Anthony reduced his flight speed and landed with a soft touch on ground. He walked up to the restaurant and entered. Immediately he entered, the manager walked up to him with a professional smile. "Good morning, young master. I'm sorry to inform you this, but the restaurant has been booked out by another individual." The manager said this as politely as possible. As Anthony was still young, the manager assumed he was one of those arrogant young masters, as the manager has dealt with a bunch of them who think themselves as kings. Anthony smiled at the manager and said, "Don't worry, I'm one of the people that booked the restaurant." The manager released a sigh of relief as he guided Anthony to a seat and served him a drink, which was on the house. Right now, Anthony was still using his F-rank aura as always. He just sat down there and waited for them. He still had extra 20 minutes on his hands. He was sure they would arrive soon. He didn't wait long before 3 people walked into the restaurant. The 3 of them looked around and spotted Anthony and walked up to him. Anthony stood up and also walked to them as they greeted one another. "Good morning. My name is Anthony. I represent the Omni Peak Academy," Anthony said with a smile as he shook their hands. The 3 of them were surprised as they saw someone from the academy. They too wanted to enter the academy, but they couldn't pass the entrance exam. To think the academy sent one of theirs. The name is Amos. "These are my brothers Zane and Chica. We are from the Hales Guild." Zane and Chica stepped forward and greeted him too. "Nice to meet you, Anthony." The 3 thought Anthony was someone who at least worked for the academy. It never crossed their minds he was a student. Of course, Anthony purposely didn't introduce himself as a student, but he also didn't say he worked for the academy, so whatever misunderstanding they had, he won't correct them. And plus cent, plus tau. He wasn't ready for that looking down on him cliché if he said he was a student. Before long, the doors sounded as 2 beauties walked in. Everyone turned and looked at them. They were both beautiful and carried themselves with power. Everyone reintroduced themselves again. The 2 beauties were Clara and Zara, and both worked at the Adventure Guild branch at City M. There's only one Adventure Guild in the human domain. Every Adventure Guild in any city is just a branch, and they all share the same network. As they all got acquainted with one another, then they just waited for the employer to arrive. As they talked with one another, they heard a series of footsteps coming down from the staircase near them. They all looked to see who was coming. One of the men walked and greeted them with a smile. "My name is Meek, your employer. You are already briefed on the mission, so no need to waste time here." The 6 of them nodded their heads. Behind Meek stood another man with a mask who didn't speak. He just stood there like a robot. Meek had been watching all of them from a camera when he was upstairs. Of course, Anthony knew this as his sense dome and sight wasn't a joke, but he didn't care. It was nice to say that Meek is a master ranker himself, though just at the 2nd level, while the man with a mask behind him was a peak Grandmaster ranker. Anthony didn't know why the Grandmaster stood behind Meek, as people only respected power here. Even if the Grandmaster was getting paid, it wasn't enough to act like he was acting right now. Anthony shook his head as it didn't concern him at all. They all walked out of the restaurant as the man already paid before anyone even arrived. He brought them to a huge van and said to them, "What you're protecting is inside. Whatever you do, do not allow anyone aside from us get closer to the van," Meek said with a serious tone. They all nodded with a smile. This wasn't anyone's first rodeo, well aside for one person. Anthony could see runes that were drawn on the van. There were various types of rune on it, like space restriction rune, damage nullification, auto clean, and many other rune that prevent stealing with some tricks. Of course, there were restrictions on these runes, as if people with better skills appears. The runes won't even stand a single attack from them. Goods like these aren't put into space rings and carried just like that for various reasons. Example, they just had to lose the ring to lose it all. The opponent just had to cut the hand holding back the ring, and it's done. The space ring could also be swapped out. The person holding the ring might just magically disappear. A lot of people have stolen goods using these methods. So physically seeing the goods was always the best way, as you always know where it is and always how to react. Meek opened the van and checked the goods one last time to be sure before they departed. The man with the mask and Meek entered the van together, while Anthony and the rest entered their own cars. They all rolled out immediately they were done with everything. Even though they all sat in a car, their scents weren't impeded in any way. For cars could be seen moving at a high speed alongside a forest, with a van in the middle and a car ahead and 2 cars behind. The crew had been driving for 2 days nonstop without rest. They all had high ranks, hence they could go some months without food or water. So they didn't need to stop and eat or sleep or anything of that nature, as their body was already too enhanced to such basic things. Technology was already too advanced, so the cars can use mana stones instead of regular old fuel. Anthony suspected it would take them within a week or 2 to get to their destination if they weren't obstructed. If they were, it might take longer. After driving for 2 days without speaking or anything, Anthony got bored of just driving. So he just switched to autopilot function of his car and just slept off, while also setting the cars in front of him as the target lock. So wherever their car goes, his would follow. Although portals could be opened to head to another location from one city to another, this wasn't done as the cost was too stupendous. Therefore, opening portals in just any city was too much, as even if they opened it, the cost to use the portal would drive away a lot of people. The portal and the building heading to the main floating island can be considered cheap, because the floating island itself was already too rich and it was just a gateway to their own home. Although there wasn't any portal in City M and City Q, some cities where major events hold possess portals interlinking them. After some days of moving, Anthony jumped on the roof of his car, then jumped again and landed on the roof of the van carrying the goods and slept there. As for his car, he just kept it in his inventory. Others sensed Anthony landing on the roof, but they didn't mind and just kept driving as Meek didn't put this as part of the rules or whatever. 5 days went by as they continued with their mission non-stop. It was nighttime and Anthony could be seen staring at the stars in the sky. He sighed as he thought that this mission was too boring. "I'm too bored. Maybe I shouldn't have chosen this mission," Anthony thought as he felt the wind against his face and his clothes billowed due to the wind. Wasn't this mission reward 100 million points? Where's the action and the dangers I was promised that come with it? Not even a single fly has attacked them since they left and embarked on their journey. Their journey continued for another 3 days, but this time they decided to stop and just stretch their legs a bit for 30 minutes before they continued the journey. As they moved, the car in front of the van suddenly stopped as they all sensed something coming from all directions. Anthony, whose eyes were closed, suddenly opened them with happiness and a smile on his face. Zane, Amos, Chica, Clara, Zara all stepped out of their own cars. The guy on the mask also stepped out of the van, but Meek didn't come out. He employed them to work for him. He wasn't here to move a muscle when he had hired men for the job. They all surrounded the van, forming a circle as they waited for whatever that was coming to arrive. After a minute of waiting, the earth shook as tremor was sent everywhere. It was a beast tide. Everyone present here knew they would be attacked by beast once or twice during their journey to City Q. But a wave of them was another things. No one knew why they attacked in such a number, but they didn't care to ask, as this wasn't this job. Millions of these monsters rushed at them with fervor in their eyes, with some of them having saliva drop from their mouth like they were drooling. Even a fool could tell after seeing this sight that whatever was in that van benefited them. Having millions of monsters ranging from the lowest F rank to the Grandmaster rank racing at you isn't really a good sight, even if it wasn't really a threat to your life. Anthony stood on top of the van while saying, Tau at percent, dash plus integral sigma, asterisk. I will handle the ones that slip past you. I will guard the van. Everyone nodded as they kept their gazes fixed ahead. As they got closer and closer, the women duo were the first to make a move without any hesitation like they have been in this situation countless times. Clara with her wind magic, Zara with her wood magic immediately erupted in sync. Wind magic, wind typhoon. Wood magic, wood palm. Huge wind typhoon and palms made of wood immediately appeared on the battlefield as it laid waste to the approaching monsters. Beolimnum. The moment they both released their spells, they both took to the skies but were still flying and hovering around the van in order to protect it. The Tree Brothers weren't to be outdone and all moved into the fray. Amos, as their group leader, was at the front, unsheathing his sword without any pause. As these monsters weren't really strong to him, he didn't use aura at all. Mana cloaked his sword as he moved out with his technique. Amos' sword technique, cut of boredom. Amos slashed out 2,000 of times as his figure zipped across the monster wave. Slash, slash, asterisk, 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 boom, asterisk, asterisk, splurt, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The sound of his sword tearing through the monster's skins echoed across as he rained death upon anything that touched his sword. Bloods of various monsters hit the ground together with their innards and heads as soon as Amos left the area. Zane followed up with his spell as he floated a few meters above the ground. Water magic, tidal crush. Water surged in front of him as mana moved and intertwined with water molecules, thereby creating a huge water tide. Swoosh, splash, asterisk, 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 burbly asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Water rushed without obstruction as it crushed everything in its path. Anthony looked at the destruction these people were causing and wasn't sure if any of the monsters would even slip through these attacks. Chica ran on the water surface like it wasn't there as he rotated his spear for some action. Mana moved from within him as it covered his weapon and thrust forward with astonishing speed and broke the sound barrier without any technique of any sort. Plurk squelp asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. He bestowed judgment on the monsters on his path as he stabbed them all of death. As Amos ran amok, he suddenly felt something behind him. Then he turned around immediately and blocked with his sword. Boom! A loud explosion ripped across from the attack, and ape made on Amos. Amos' sword blocked the fist without an issue, but his feet sank into the ground due to the sheer force of the ape. Amos immediately stepped back and got a better look at his sneaky attacker. Peak Master Rank. Amos thought as he looked at the ape that was 10 feet in height with huge fists and was silver in color. Just by looking at it, anyone with a brain can tell that its defense and strength wasn't a joke or something to scoff at. Amos and the beast both stared at each other. Then, as if they could read each other's minds, they disappeared from their position. As a sword and a fist met, an implosion occurred, pushing everything in a 3 kilometers range backwards with an immense force and strength. BLMMM. This time around, Amos' feet didn't sink, but stood steadily absorbing the impact. Then they both disappeared in place again as they ran around and collided forcefully in the forest as they continued fighting and raining down attacks. The ape kept sending out punches that shattered anything in its path and left loud explosion sounds immediately it was sent out. In front of the ape, Amos just kept blocking and blocking as his figure flickered across the field. As he moved, he didn't have to attack the surrounding monsters, as the result of their attacks left the monsters anything but alive. Although the ape was ridiculously huge, it didn't make it slow in any way. Rather, it was extremely fast and precise with its attack. Amos' sword vibrated intensely as it collided with the ape's fists. He felt like he was striking the hardest metal on the planet as his attacks only left tiny scratches on the ape's fists, which immediately disappears, showing its remarkable regeneration. But that didn't deter him. He just continued his assault without a pause, as he too had his own cards up his sleeves. Amos immediately changed his momentum as he suddenly took the attack to another level, as aura and fire instantly moved on his sword. His next attack caught the ape off guard. Amos' sword technique, fire type, cut of boredom. Amos released the same attack as last time, but this time he took it up a notch. The ape, sensing the sudden shift in battle, instantly moved to dodge, but Amos was faster here. Boom slash asterisk 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 splurt asterisk asterisk. His sword connected with the ape's chest as he tore apart the ape's flesh as blood flowed out instantly. Blood dripped onto the ground as the ape finally put a distance between them. But Amos wasn't about to let this ape have a breathing space. He instantly disappeared and appeared in front of the ape and swung his sword fiercely in order to finish it off in one sword attack. But that little space already gave the ape all it needed to keep up with Amos. The ape quickly dodged to the side, with the sword barely grazing its neck as the ape narrowly dodged the attack. Then the game of cat and mouse began as Amos kept on attacking, but the ape just kept weaving around, dodging at the last second. The ape just kept dodging and didn't block this time around, as Amos' strength has taken a step further again. So it could only dodge and not dare to block, or its arms would be sliced off. Amos, seeing that he couldn't still slay the beast, paused for a split second and decided to change his movement again. So he used his movement technique to move at a greater speed. Amos' leg technique. Movement type, tread of boredom. Amos instantly disappeared from his place and arrived in front of the ape and sent out another slash with an increased speed. Swish! But this is a battlefield. Even a split second could determine people's life. And that split second was everything and only thing the ape needed to get back in place. The ape's body immediately glowed and shimmered silver as its body became even more robust and thick. The injury from earlier closed up instantly. Its strength and speed increased once again as the ape buffed up itself. As Amos' sword was about to take off the ape's neck, a hand quickly rose up and stopped the sword on its path. Amos quickly stepped back once again as he scrutinized this new sight. As Amos stared at the ape didn't bother looking at Amos. Rather, it took a stance like a marital artist, and mana and the wind elements surged forth and gathered on its fist that was placed near its waist. The ape immediately punched out, without mercy, as it sent out a deadly wind cannon punch attack that rushed towards Amos. Amos, feeling the weight of the attack from the wind punch heading towards him, instantly channeled his mana and activated his movement technique and stepped out of the way. Boom! Everything in a 4-kilometer radius was instantly crushed and reduced to debris from the ape's attack after Amos dodged. Trees fell and mountains crumbled from the immensity of such attack. The ape saw its attack didn't hit its opponent, but wasn't discouraged. Rather, it sent out more attacks, as in a space of less than a second, the ape sent out 1,000 more such attacks. Its fist and arm only leaving many afterimages, as the ape continuously punched out into space directly in front of Amos. "A mere beast dares to get cocky with me," Amos said as he took a stance and didn't dodging this time around, but rather took the attack head on. He increased the intensity of his aura as mana roared as the heat emitting out of the fire on his sword increased. Amos' sword technique. Fire type, sever of boredom. Amos moved with a blinding speed as he slashed out 1,000 times to sever all cannon punch in half. Although he didn't bear the brunt of the attack, the surrounding did. Trees were set aballs as a large amount of smoke and fumes covered everything and everywhere. Stones and sand melted and burned down to its lowest form in the presence of Amos' flames as earthquakes continued traveling around a 7 kilometers radius. Amos and the ape both stood unharmed after the release of such attacks. Amos suddenly sighed as he was too bored with this fight. "Too bad I can't hang around and play with you today," Amos said as he shook his head in pity. "I have to end this quickly as I have a mission to complete. So this is goodbye," Amos said with a smile. Though just a smile, the ape could feel death looming over it. It suddenly felt death for no apparent reason. Listening to its instinct, it immediately turned to run away, without hesitation. "It's futile, my dear ape," Amos said as he moved swiftly. Amos' original sword technique. First page, flicker of happiness. Amos swung his sword with a flicker of happiness that disappeared immediately. The moment he sloshed out, the ape was immediately sliced into 4 equal parts horizontally and vertically. Vlemper chapter. The ape died, and its body fell on the ground with blood gushing out profusely. Amos turned around and looked at his teammates, and saw they were handling their own opponents easily. Anthony saw that the battle was about to end for other also, and he hasn't even made a move yet. His eyes met with Amos' eyes. Then he gave Amos a knowing smile. The guy on a mask already stepped out of the van and took care of the Grandmaster rank beast with just a single attack. So Anthony had to make a move in order not to be on his teammate's bad side. Although he usually doesn't care about these kind of things, doesn't mean he would become stupid. Anthony floated up and stood on the air as he proceeded to cast a spell, as he had decided to just wipe out every living beast present right now. With his all-seeing eyes, he could see how many monsters were here, the battlefield size, and many more. Nature magic. Mana zone. Return to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Your life. As Anthony casted this spell, every sentient life form within range felt instant death at this moment. All monsters rushing to the van, and those that were attacking suddenly stopped in their tracks for a second. Thud, thud, asterisk, 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 thud, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Sounds of dead bodies hitting the floor resounded as all and every sentient being asides Anthony's teammates died on the spot without struggling or resisting. They all died as their bodies and became empty husks as their souls, which didn't belong to them, has been returned to the owner. There was no explosion or impact or devastating sounds or any flashy skill or spell. Just a flash of light pulsing out of Anthony as he released such spell together with his infinite mana skill, and all life was taken. Everyone looked at Anthony in shock and fear, their eyes almost coming off their sockets. Although there were numerous spells and techniques that were obviously overpowered, they have never seen or heard anything like this before in their entire lives. Why would they hear it? If someone had this move, then it would be saved as a trump card. Everyone instantly raised their guard up to the maximum. Although they were talking and laughing in the restaurant earlier, and also talked while they stretched their legs during the 30 minutes break. At the end of the day, everyone was a stranger, and they were just here to complete a mission, and everything is done. There was no trust or anything of that sort here. Even Amos, Chica, and Zane won't dare to say that they trust one another 100%, as a treasure or money could just make one of them make a move against the other. Even Meek adjusted and moved closer to his own personal bodyguard. At the end of the day, Anthony was just a hired personnel. He never trusted him at all. Even if he was from the academy, there was no guarantee he won't kill everyone here and take their treasures. Many people have done this already. But as they all stood and stared at him with a wary gaze, a thought lingered in their minds. If he casts such spell again, can we defend? This is indeed a good question. This wasn't like elemental magic, which people could see the attack, then defend, dodge, or counterattack immediately, unless you have a soul skill, technique, or ability. Even though Anthony always released his F-rank aura, none of them were foolish enough to believe that, as even they themselves sometimes don't even release any aura at all. They weren't some brainless young masters. No need to be so afraid. We are comrades in arms. If nobody makes a move against me, I won't make a move against them. Besides, even if I made a move first, I'm sure the Academy would hunt me to death. Anthony said with a smile as he spoke. I thought you were a swordsman due to the katana hanging on your waist. Who would have thought you also practice magic? Amos replied as he walked towards Anthony. Well, let's just say I'm among the arrogant ones that refuse to stick to their class, but multi-cultivate. Anthony replied plainly as he floated down. Oh, I see. I wish you luck on your path then, Anthony. Amos replied, not believing what Anthony said about being arrogant and walking a double path. Would an arrogant person so easily admit they were arrogant? Of course not. We should round up the corpse and be on the move immediately before their blood attract more monsters. Meek's voice sounded as he looked at the large amount of corpse scattered around. Everyone nodded and decided to get on the move. Everyone took the corpse of the monsters they killed and nothing more. They were all entitled to the spoils of whatever they handled on their journey. As everything was taken, they immediately took to the skies and flew with fast speed as they wanted to cover up the ground faster this time. After flying for about an hour, they all settled down and immediately camped. Nobody was stupid enough to set fire here, so everyone just resided in their own tent and counted their spoils of the battle. Meek ordered his personal bodyguard to be on the lookout. Well, there was no need for a lookout since none of them were actually going to sleep. Zara went closer to Anthony and said with a smile and her charm, "So, are you as talented with the sword as you are with magic?" Anthony looked at her with a gentle expression and said, "I won't say I'm talented. I'm just doing my part in this journey." Zara was extremely beautiful and could rival even other bloodline races despite being human. Her wood magic gave her a graceful body and enormous vitality, and her body giving off a calm, yet attractive and peaceful feeling. This took her charming level to a mind-bugging level. Now she wanted to use this to fish out information from Anthony. Although she saw that she couldn't compare herself to Anthony in terms of pure face values, she at least had confidence he has never seen anyone as beautiful as her. And now, she would use this benefit given by her affinity to fish out information. Wow. I too am doing my part, but it's just too draining while training the wood element. She sighed with a sad face, as if she was reminiscing about her training. Anthony knew it was all a charade, but he played along. Anthony, do you have the wood elemental affinity so we can train together?" Zara said again, as her face suddenly changed from sadness to happiness. "Well, I haven't seen anybody with the wood element. It would have been cool, just like you, and maybe they can control an entire forest." Anthony said with a sigh as he looked at the sky, but he was eyeing Zara from the corner of his eyes. Her expression was that of a disappointment, as if him not having a wood elemental affinity just killed their training session. She really deserves an Oscar award with this level of acting. She should reincarnate as an actress on Earth. Anthony mused silently as looked at her. Meanwhile, Zara was having crisis as she was just frowning. Normally, when you ask someone if they had a certain element, they either affirmed or replied with the one they possessed. But Anthony did none of this, which made her have no progress with her digging out information from him. The rest simply recovered their lost mana as they listened to their conversation. But they didn't get any information after eavesdropping on their conversation. Well, it doesn't matter. The fact that you work for the Academy means you are highly talented. Did you graduate from the Academy? Zara instantly came back on track. To her question, Anthony replied again as he shook his head at her. "I didn't graduate from the Academy. I just trained alone and tried my best to remain alive." Anthony didn't lie to her, who knew if this woman had a lie detection skill or something of that nature. Although he didn't lie, he could twist the truth. And with that, he just twisted the answers he gave Zara. There was no way Zara didn't have a lie detection skill, as she would surely take advantage of her charm and beauty. Complementing it with such a skill would make her information-gathering skill to soar. But as she asked all these questions, Anthony could see that she was on edge, ready to react anytime if he ever made a move. After the rest, they all brought out their cars and followed the van and continued their journey with their former formation. The Null family were too shocked to speak. Unlike Anthony's teammates, they understood what Anthony had done. Anthony touched the souls of millions, which was way too outrageous. The mana he also released, the mana zone, the mana control. Everything left them shocked to the core. "Are you sure this is our grandson and not some higher being?" Collins said with a smile as he looked at Anthony. "I always knew my son was talented, but to think he was this talented." Michael said with a smile as he remembered when Anthony showed him his SS rank aura. But what Anthony just displayed was very well above that rank he displayed earlier. To think he also has soul affinity, I can't wait to see his true sword skill, as this will be the first time I get to see him battle. Michael continued, speaking as he wanted to see his son swing the sword. He has never seen Anthony train or anything, so he really wanted to see his son's full power. "I want to see his magic. With the way he casted that soul spell, it felt too easy." Mitchell said, as she said, "Want to see how far her son has come with magic. It seems I'm the only one left out. Sigh, should I convince my grandson to learn healing magic?" Irene said as reply to everyone, since all of them were talking too much about their own field. They all laughed and decided to keep moving, and within fraction of a second, they caught up to Anthony and his teammates. As the crew kept moving, monsters kept attacking them nonstop. They were all on frenzy, determined to get whatever was in that van. But this time they didn't stop. Anthony, who was standing on the van, just kept sending out attacks left and right without pause. As for the corpse, he used telekinesis to bring all of them to his front. Everyone agreed they would share the corpse, with Anthony gave the biggest share, as they didn't make a move at all. If they kept stopping continuously, it might take a long time to get to City Q. Also, they wanted to see the extent of Anthony's magic, so while they drove, they also kept a close eye on the magic Anthony casted. Earth magic, moving quicksand. Earth shook as 5 kilometers radius turned muddy and sandy suddenly, and millions of monsters chasing after them sank into the sand, and their fates were instantly sealed. Anthony's teammates frowned when they saw this. They just lost millions of mana core and corpse, but they couldn't do or say anything about it. They were literally making money by doing nothing other than drive. Who were they to complain about Anthony's wastage and methods? For hours later, Anthony still continued with his rampage like he was getting mana from another place. High in the sky, birds swooped down in a flash, some even raining down attacks, while some wanted to just use their force and velocity to crash the entire convoy. Anthony instantly moved with his spell. Wind magic, breezing barrier. Mana instantly left Anthony's body as he casted wind magic. Boom brrrzzz asterisk 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 asterisk. Everywhere shook from the intensity of multiple aerial attacks, and assaults rained down on their group. The attacks kept colliding with the barrier, threatening to tear it to pieces. But the barrier stood firm without a single crack. Anthony moved immediately to counterattack before any of them could make any more moves on him. Wind magic, flap of a million crying birds. Mana and wind element intertwined as multiple wind birds instantly materialized in the skies and simultaneously flapped their wings and unleashed attacks on the birds that were flying without mercy. Swish repli asterisk asterisk shreech asterisk asterisk. They all immediately moved to get out of the way, but the wind magic birds were faster as they unleashed their assault, killing most of them in one go. Like ants to a sugar, the monsters remained relentless even after seeing many of their kind die and their bodies floating to their enemies and disappearing. A Grandmaster rank panther instantly materialized beside Anthony with no sound and a ridiculous speed. It sent out a paw attack on Anthony's head without any thoughts of failure, as all enemies have fallen to this attack. Bam! Much to its disappointment, a mana barrier formed with accurate precision and stopped the panther's paw in its path. The panther, seeing this, instantly flicked its tail and sent out another attack, which was stopped by Infinity. Anthony turned and looked at the panther. Before it could even react, it was engulfed in blue flames and was reduced to nothing, as not even its ashes weren't left to be scattered by the wind. A Grandmaster rank beast lost to a Master ranker in barely 2 seconds. Such an absurd feat, yet so simple and easy. Romulus, it's time to make a move. Anthony said in his mind to the divine flame. My flames are finally making an entrance, huh? I guess I would enjoy the meal then. Anthony didn't reply. He simply just clasped his palm of his hands together as he casted. Fire magic, mana zone. Iron no Ninsho. The skies seemed to brighten up, the wind seemed to burn up, the trees seemed to disintegrate as everyone witnessed an astonishing feat. Fire in shapes of a missile quickly converged and materialized in the sky. The entire space in the sky seems to the taken, as it was all filled up with an attack ready to devour it all at its master's orders. Anthony's teammates felt death if this attacks landed on them. Millions of blue fire missiles instantly rained down on every single monster available, be them underground, be them on the land, be them in the sky. Nothing would be spared. Everything within a 200 kilometers was literally engulfed and devoured by sparkling blue flames. Biolimem. Everything shook Immediately the blue flames landed. Trees and mountains suddenly vanished from sight as everything was swallowed. Even space was devouring itself, and the void wasn't spared either. Intense energy surged as everything was laid to total destruction and havoc. Those with fire affinity like Amos, who had a certain level of resistance to fire, could feel it in their core. They would be burned to death by this flame. The demolition continued even after Anthony left the area, as the flames refused to stop at all. But Anthony had to cancel out the flame, or it might devour the entire forest. MVLMPYR, your story source. For the rest of the team, while they drove, couldn't get the fear settling in their hearts to leave their heart. What amount of mana is this? This shouldn't be possible. Isn't this cheating? Zara thought when she looked at the pure blue sky that was even made more beautiful by the bright blue flames. The mages here knew they had no mana to cast such large-scale attack. Anthony stood there on the van as he looked at the destruction he caused with happiness. It was everyone's dreams to rain destruction on everything once in a while, without consequences, while using various magics simultaneously. Beautiful. This was the only word in Anthony's head as he saw the apocalypse he unleashed. Now he understood why this mission cost 100 million points. The constant running, the constant attack, the constant defense. You must run out of man here, leaving you defenseless. You must run out of mana potions and stamina and healing potions mid-fight. With this endless horde of monsters, even his subordinate might die without life-saving skills like Spatial Mark. This was a mission. Nobody is meant to save you or protect you. Everybody for themselves. If Amos and others saw Anthony being pushed by, they won't make a move at all. Because, why should they? He should at least buy more time for them to escape. Besides, the loot on his body would be many and make them rich. Also, whatever secret he is hiding that gave him such strength can be harvested from his brain after death. Various opportunities just from his death alone. So, asides the abnormal Anthony with his infinite mana and endless knowledge on magic spells, Ammonite Peak students either have to escape or die here. Without Anthony here, it was certain everyone on the team would die. Scenario. Of course, this illusion didn't work on Anthony's family. He is too weak for that. Amos and the rest of the crew suddenly became vigilant. Then they heard a sound of fingers brushing against each another, creating a snap sound. Snap! This sound brought them out of their illusion, and everything returned to normal. Of course, this was Anthony bringing them out of the illusion. If not, they had no hope of escaping. Anthony then laid down on top of the van again and closed his eyes, with a smug on his face. Everyone on the team had a grim expression on their faces, but none of them said anything. They just kept driving and moving forward. After another 3 days of constantly moving, they finally stopped and let down their guard a little. If it wasn't for Anthony's intervention, they would have been stumped to death under that stampede. Everyone gathered together to share the loot from Anthony's massacre. Anthony kept 70% and allowed them to share the rest amongst themselves. Of course, Anthony also took the most valuable corpse amongst all of them. He was rich didn't mean he was generous or Santa Claus. After sharing the rest amongst themselves, they talked for a bit as they continued getting closer to City Q. Anthony, I didn't know you were this strong, Zara said with a smile, as it seemed she wasn't tired of her information fishing. Well, the Academy only accepts the strong and talented. If I wasn't strong or talented, I wouldn't have been accepted in the first place. Anthony replied. That makes sense, Zara said. Zane looked at Anthony and said with some hesitation, Anthony, how are you able to constantly cast spells like you had extra amount of mana? Anthony looked at him and replied with a straight face and in a straightforward way. Well, that's part of my secret, so I can't really say, but I can only say that something supplies the mana needed for such casting. So like an artifact that stores mana over time, then you can tap into that reserve of mana instead of yours. Chica said as a certain type of light flashed his eyes in less than a second, then disappeared. Anthony didn't reply. He just smiled at them. And to them, Anthony's silence was consent. Anthony didn't confirm nor deny this because of Zara's skill. Everything he said early was the truth. Well, not entirely, but indeed without talent and strength the Academy won't accept you as a student or professor. Even when he said he had something that helped with the mana during the casting of the spells. That too was the truth, he just didn't say what the thing was. And when they said it was an artifact, he neither confirmed nor denied. He just redirected the whole thing. So that means Anthony has probably exhausted the mana stored in the artifact, so he decided to stop. But the way he was still standing tall after casting all those spells shows he didn't touch the mana in his core in case of emergencies. It probably also takes a lot of time to recharge such a large reservoir. Zara quickly analyzed at the side as she heard them discuss amongst one another. But she wasn't the only one who arrived at this conclusion. Everyone did. Everyone chatted for a while as they finally got a breather as Anthony's illusion spell kept the monsters at bay. Everyone rested for 3 hours this time before they all departed and continued their journey. After journeying for an extra 2 days, they finally got to their destination. City Q came into view the closer they drove. This time Anthony didn't sit on top of the van. Instead, he drove his own car as they had already reached their destination. They all got in without issues by clearing everything with security. Anthony saw high-rise buildings everywhere, people zooming past them with their own cars. They drove up to a peculiar secluded area that made them look like they were thugs and were pushing illegal items and drugs. They waited for a few minutes as Meek stepped out and made a call. He talked on the phone for about a minute before he was done and went back to stand near his bodyguard. They waited for 30 minutes before a black car with tints arrived at the scene. A man with red hair and red beards stepped out of the car. His bodyguard followed behind him as the man walked up to Meek with a smile. Seemed limper for more. How was the trip? The man inquired with a smile. No need for small talks, let's get down to business immediately. Meek said like the businessman that he was. The man smiled and didn't say anything. He just replied with a simple nod. A woman who was part of the bodyguard came forward and the rest stepped back. Only the man and Meek remained by the van that was holding the supposed goods. As everyone stepped back, the woman raised her hand and casted a spell. Barrier magic, space enclosement. The space around the van instantly became dark as a black dome materialized and covered 50 meters around the van. Only those inside the enclosement can know what is happening inside the dome. Not even the caster can. As everything was prepared and done, Meek and the man started discussing. I hope what you said about the goods isn't a lie, Meek. The man said as he looked at the van. No need to speak so much. Meek replied as he walked towards the van and opened it. A heart revealed itself as it pulsed with pure, uncontained energy. It was a dragon heart. It possessed the fire element. Eating such a thing could yield untold benefits. Even if you don't have the fire element, you would still benefit in many ways. This was why every monster was in a frenzy and was after the van. Although the van hid the heart and withstood the energy being released by the heart, the runes on the van couldn't fool the instinct of those monsters. Although Meek could keep such things for himself and use it, he knew better than this. He wasn't the battle type. It was simply a waste of fortune. So he sold it for an outrageous amount of money and resources. Dragon corpse or either of their remains are hard to get, as whenever a dragon dies, the clan always tries to get back its corpse to prevent a lot of things. The red-haired man's eyes instantly lit up when he saw the package. You delivered on your promise. Now I shall deliver on mine, the man said as he took off a space ring from one of his fingers and tossed it to Meek. Meek caught it and looked through its content, then nodded with a satisfied look on his face. The red-haired man instantly took out a huge box with runes on and in it and transferred the dragon heart there. Meek and the man both looked at each other and nodded as a sign of closure business. The man sent a signal to the barrier woman, and the barrier was instantly lifted. Meek looked at his crew, then nodded. They all walked to their car and stepped on the gas as they all disappeared from sight. The moment they left their rendezvous point, they all headed to a hotel in order to get some rest. Although they stopped once in a while during the journey and rested for a while, they didn't dare to sleep and enter dreamland. They only rested with their eyes wide open, because who knew when a monster would attack out of nowhere? So they only rested physically, but not mentally. They all drove away and stopped in front of a hotel, for valets stepped out while exuding aura of a peak SSS ranker. The four valets took their car keys as they each drove a car to the garage exclusive to the hotel residents. The team stepped into the hotel lobby with steady footsteps. As they entered, everyone's gaze turned to them, their gaze scrutinizing all of them. As per the rules of the hotel, only Master Ranker and above are allowed to book a room in this hotel. Anyone below that rank can only be workers, and that's all. Although Anthony radiated his usual F-rank aura, nobody here was fooled by it. The way he walked, the stride, the grace, the face, the attire. It wasn't something an F-ranker could possess, and they were sure no F-ranker would be suicidal enough to step in here. They walked up to the clerk at the desk in order to book a room. Room for 7. Meek said in a happy tone, the success of the business still coursing through his veins. Meek paid for the rooms that cost 30 low mana crystals each. Meek didn't need to pay for anybody's room. He only did so because of the stress everyone went through and because of the deal's success. Meek and a masked man would be staying in one room together. There was no way he would be alone in such a foreign environment. Hosted Dom Vlemper. The clerk gave them the room keys before another staff walked up and showed each of them to their rooms. Before they departed, Meek told them that they would leave City QANS return in 2 days. So they had 2 days to rest, eat, tour, or do whatever they wanted. They all nodded and entered their own rooms and went through with their activities. Anthony entered his own room and looked around with a simple gaze. Anthony could see runes written all over the room, like the cleaning rune and many more. The walls were coated with a unique metal that blocked out perceptions so that others can't spy on other people. Of course, this is through normal spying by relying on one's own senses and all that. If people use their ability or techniques, the special metal would be no different than a regular wall. Anthony used his own ability to cover up the room, so anybody with any spying thoughts can just forget about it. Anthony stood at his room window and looked down as his room was on the 50th floor of the 100-story building. He stood there as he looked down at other people walking and laughing. Truly, ignorance is bliss, as they say. Anthony thought as he looked at everyone smile and move. Each person here won't really understand how hard the domain had to work to allow them sleep and wake up without a demon or monster killing them 10 times over. Truly, ignorance paid off in their situation. Anthony pitied them for not knowing the truth of the world and what is going on. But even if they knew, what could they do with that information, other than nothing? Anthony wasn't some hero sent to this by some goddess to save her world from the clutches of the Demon King, and the goddess Mysterious can't intervene in her own world. Even if the monsters from the forest that attacked him earlier appeared here and wreaked havoc in this city, Anthony won't make a single move, as it wasn't his job. Save the world? Protect the weak? Create a safe haven for humanity? Who are you kidding? None of these were Anthony's task. If he wanted to do it, he would do it on his own accord or because offered some rewards or something, but for free or by forcing him. You can just take your jokes to the theater and perform on stage. Saint? Hero? Philanthropist? Savior? Hell nah. Anthony would gladly give the title and mantle to the next reincarnator. Of course, Anthony isn't a villain. He simply just didn't care. But if during the destruction of City Q and maybe the monsters mistakenly enters his room in the hotel and he is forced to attack, he would just wipe them out at once since he already made a move. Anthony shook his head as he got rid of the useless thoughts from his head. He just took off his clothes and decided to freshen up. After going through his normal routine, he changed clothes, then went to the king-sized bed and slept off. Anthony slept for hours like a newborn baby. Not only him, everyone from the team also slept immediately they got to their designated rooms after they were done bathing. When Anthony woke up, it was already dark, and the moon hung in the sky while bestowing the world with its beautiful light. Anthony glanced at the moon as he always loved looking at the stars whenever he could. After a while, he stood up and headed to the bathroom and showered again, then dressed up and left his room. He was heading for the ground floor of the building, where he saw the first clerk. He didn't bother taking the elevator. He simply walked to the stairs and got to the middle that created an empty space between the stairs. Anthony climbed a rail guard, then dropped down the stairs as gravity pushed him down. Anthony smiled as he checked this off his imaginary bucket list. He always wanted to do this when climbing the stairs of the company he worked for, since he rarely used the elevator the company had. But he knew doing this was a ticket to the Reaper, so he could only add it to his imaginary bucket list. But now he could. When he got to the ground, Anthony didn't need to deploy any technique or use mana or any element to cushion his fall. He had perfect control over his body, a height as small as this was a walk in the park for him. The height ain't small. Don't let Anthony deceive you. Anthony landed with a deft touch, and not even a single decibel of sound could be picked up or heard. He went straight to the clerk sitting behind a desk and asked a question. "Where can I find the dining hall?" The hotel gave the option to eat in your room or eat in a dining hall. The room was for eating alone for privacy, and the dining hall for people who want to look around and make connections. Anthony had decided to look around for a while. He might as well eat and admire the beauties passing by. The clerk simply made a call, and a staff instantly appeared with full speed. The staff then led Anthony to the dining hall. Anthony was led to an entirely different expansive space. Many doors clung to the building, as in place of a roof, a glass dome-like ceiling appeared. Different races could be seen eating their food with class befitting their strength. Some walked on the floor, some just floated away the moment they were done eating and talking, not bothering to walk. Anthony looked upwards, and he could see that at about 1,000 meters, being sat down on floating chairs and tables while dining to the finest meals the hotel could offer. Different staff could have been seen flashing around the hall as they delivered the ordered food and then disappear from their location. Some flew upwards to those eating on the floating chairs and tables and attended to them with utmost care. The weakest staff here was at the A rank. Even though those at the A rank couldn't fly naturally, there were many ways around this. Some just manipulated their elements and took to the skies, and others to respond to their guests' orders. Some born with inherent ability to fly, giving them the ability to fly the very first day they awaken at age 10. Even though you can get this ability at SSS rank, well, at least it's better than nothing. It's also worthy to note that here, people didn't flare their auras. Everything was calm like they were ordinary people. Those who chose to release some aura, as they couldn't really contain it, just released aura in the mortal rank like Anthony. This is also a hotel rule in other not to affect the staff's efficiency. Although some have broken this rule and made troubles for some staff, they all met two different types of fate. 1. Instant death on the spot. 2. By getting crippled by shattering your mana core, or at least putting some cracks on it. This wasn't any different than death. Actually, it's worse than death. Imagine what your enemies would do when they find out your core has shattered or you have cracks on it and can no longer wield mana. Such a fate is worse than death. So although people with power came here, people don't dare to mess with the staff. Even if someone possessed power to wipe out the hotel in whole, was even in City Q, they won't be in a hotel in the first place. So all in all, power and strength and connection are needed to establish an organization like this, where you would basically run at a loss and nobody would want to work for you. In this dining hall, there was no VIP here. If you want to discuss something private, employ your own means and solve that problem. The staff already left as Anthony got to the dining hall. It was left to Anthony to pick a seat and for the dining staff to attend to him. Anthony, seeing some free chairs and tables floating, instantly appeared there and sat down. On the table were 2 buttons, one to talk to a staff in person. The other, when pressed, presents a touch screen, giving you the pleasure to select the food you want, and it would be delivered to you once it's ready. And of course, the price tags were added in order not to eat more than your own pockets. Anthony just selected his food from the touchscreen. The screen had many options, but Anthony was quick with it. As he was done placing the order, in 3 minutes a staff in a tuxedo appeared looking like a butler and placed various foods on the table. The staff placed a glass on the table and poured a pint of wine for Anthony. As the staff was done, he bowed to Anthony slightly, then disappeared in place. Such efficiency was what everyone loved about this place. Anthony dug in with happiness as he felt his tongue dancing to the rhythm of the taste. Truly, the hotel outdid themselves. Although Anthony could just buy food from the system and eat in peace and alone, he was already tired of that. It was all about the scene these days. As Anthony ate and drank, he looked at the beauties that walked and flew by. Official. Although there were beauties in the academy, they were still children, although in this world's standards they were already adults. As Anthony drank, he suddenly felt some familiar presence. He turned to the door in that direction and saw 5 people walk in. Amos, Zane, Chica, Zara, Clara all arrived together. They also marveled at such a scene for some seconds before Zane sensed Anthony. They all floated to meet him. Then they all sat down together with Anthony and started chatting with him. They all placed their own orders and ate various food. The atmosphere was really nice and enchanting. The light from the moon penetrating through the dome like glass, ceiling perfectly blended with the lights in the dining hall. As the night went on, many women sent mischievous looks, smiles, and kisses at Anthony. His looks and charms were hard to ignore wherever he went. The gratifying food blended together with Anthony's Hondome face and charming etiquette was the perfect night for them. Some sent over their room numbers to Anthony so that they could have a fun night and maybe more. Even some men dared to step forward and ask for some night together. Anthony's lips could only twitch in embarrassment as he could only endure. "It seems you are the highlight of the night," Zane said as he looked at Anthony with a smile, as he could tell Anthony was uncomfortable with men approaching him. "Of course, if you name your price. I would also book your service for the night, if you were free, as everyone has a price," Chica said with an evil smirk as he poured more oil to the fire. "It seems sometimes handsome people have their bad days. I wonder when a man would also want to spend a night with me." Amos said like he was truly sad, but he mocked Anthony, adding salt to an open injury. They all taunted him one after another. Anthony wanted nothing more than to fry these idiots with his eternal flames. They laughed till small tears left their eyes as Anthony could only frown. Truly being at this end of the stick isn't nice, Anthony thought as he fell into his thoughts again and gazed at the stars. As they were done with their food, everyone decided to look around the city and enjoy the night before they retired to their rooms. And with that, the 5 of them stood up and left the hotel as they wanted to explore everything. Of course, before they left, Zara already told Anthony she would enjoy his company in her or his room if he was ready. Anthony wasn't in the mood to tour the city anymore as his teammates' taunting made him sour, so he could only retire to his room and sleep away his sorrows. When Amos and the rest of the team were done exploring, they all retired to their various beds and slept off. Meek and his bodyguard were nowhere to be found, as it seemed they didn't even leave the room after paying for it. Anthony woke up from his angry slumber. He looked outside the window as the sun shined down his face. "I guess we would be leaving tomorrow," as the leader said. Anthony thought as he left his bed and went about his usual morning routine. He went to the same dining and ate to his content. This time he didn't meet any of his teammates and met only those that flirted with him the day before. 7 hours later, Amos, Chica, and Zane could be seen talking and laughing in Zane's room happily. As they discussed amongst one another, their phones all beeped at the same time. When it beeped, they all frowned. Although it was normal for a phone to beep, but 3 beeping at the same time isn't a good sign at all. They all looked at one another for a while, before Amos looked at his phone first before others. As he read through the content, he kept an expressionless face till he got to the bottom part where he stopped in shock. The rest of the crew, seeing this, immediately read through the message. They all had the same expression because what they saw at the end of the message was too shocking. The message they received was simple and straightforward. It was a mission, an assassination mission to be exact. Their mission was to kill Anthony anyhow they saw fit before he returns to the academy. The part that made them fall into shock was the price tag at the ending of the message. It was a whopping 1 billion top mana crystals. Such amount of money they didn't even dare to dream about. They have never seen 1 million top mana crystals, talk more of 1 billion of it. They could only imagine what they could do with so much money in their hands. Their cultivation would skyrocket and move through leaps and bounds due to abundance of resources. The sender of the mission remained anonymous, so they didn't know who gave them the mission. But the trio couldn't care less about this, as it wasn't their concern. Their concern was how to kill Anthony and how to share the reward stated. The three of them nodded their heads and were about to start their discussion about the mission. But before they could even start, they heard a knock on the door. The three of them frowned again, but this time it was at the same time. They just got an offer of a lifetime, and a knock sounded at the same time. It sounded too coincidental to be true. They all drew their weapons, just in case they had to make a move at any moment. Amos walked up to the door with his right hand, now placed on his sword, then using the left to open the door. As the door swung open, he saw the remaining group, which were 4 in numbers, which are Meek, the masked man, Clara, and Zara. Meek is a straight-to-business type guy, so he didn't bother to beat around the bush and asked in a straightforward manner, "Did you receive the message?" Amos looked at him for a second to be sure that they were talking about the same message, then nodded his head. After his confirmation, Meek didn't waste any other words and just walked in and sat down together with the rest. As they sat together, everyone kept quiet and waited for who was to speak first. Amos sighed, as he didn't want to keep waiting for who would speak first. So he created barrier with his aura to block any of their discussion from spreading out. "My team will be accepting this mission," Amos said as soon as he was done creating the barrier. "My sister and I would also accept the mission," Clara said with a smile. Then they all turned to Meek and the masked man. They all waited for his answer. Meek tapped his fingers on the table as various thoughts went through his mind at lightning speed. 1,000,000,000 top mana crystals was something only the truly rich and powerful could possess. And for Anthony to incur the wrath of these people meant he wasn't an ordinary person. If Anthony was a small-time player like the rest of them here, the person intending to kill Anthony won't need to send out an anonymous assassination mission. They won't even bother hiring weaklings like them. Instead, they would send one of theirs after Anthony. This also meant that Anthony has a powerhouse or force behind him either as strong as them, or even more formidable, making them send out an anonymous assassination mission. Besides, Meek wasn't ready to risk anything right now, as he already acquired a massive amount of resources through his last deal just some hours ago. He wasn't ready to risk it all for another one. Although he was greedy and hungry for such reward that came with the mission, but he wasn't a fool to step into such an obvious trap. And he is also a businessman. Knowing when to be greedy and when not to be is one of the required skills of business. Besides, it might seem like they had the advantage and all that with their number and strength, but what if they don't actually have any advantage? The only thing they needed to be wary about was the mana container that allows Anthony to store mana, which he used to span spells all day before he stopped his mana had finished. Meek wasn't ready to believe that Anthony didn't have another trump card up his sleeves. Having such vast amount of mana saved up was worthy of being a trump card, and someone just pulling out something like that like it was garbage meant that the person even has a stronger trump card waiting. As far as their rate of success wasn't 100%, Meek wasn't ready to take any risk at all. If he hadn't acquired his current resources through the sale of the Dragon Heart, he might have accepted the mission. So Meek chose to play it safe. As for the rest of the team, he didn't bother to relay this information and his thoughts to them. After all, why should he? All these thoughts flashed Meek's mind in less than 2 seconds as his businessman thinking skills came into play. He then looked at them and replied, "I won't be joining." The others were surprised that someone actually turned down such a reward. With that, they started discussing how to share the reward and other things. Although we should be wary of that mana tank Anthony carries around. I'm sure he spent almost all of it with those spells he casted the other day, Zara said as she licked her lips. I also refuse to believe that such mana could be recovered easily, so it's possible he won't have the same amount of mana as before, Amos said with a grin. The thought of 1,000,000,000 top mana crystals still playing in their minds. Discover Vlemper novels. As they discussed, they finally got to the reward part. They argued who would get Anthony's mana-saving artifact. As they saw they couldn't land on a conclusion, they decided to leave it for whoever made the most effort. As for the remaining things on Anthony, they decided to share it 20% each person since there were just 5 of them here. As they all agreed to share the remaining loot 20% each, Meek's voice sounded. Aren't you forgetting about me? Although I won't be getting any reward from the 1,000,000,000 top mana crystals, at least I should get something from Anthony's corpse. Don't you all agree? Don't get greedy, Meek. Why should you get something when you aren't even lifting a finger during the battle? Zara said as he started unleashing a tiny bit of killing intent. The others didn't reply and just waited for his response because they all had the same question. Well, although I won't be lifting a finger during the battle, I can at least interfere after the battle. Immediately, Meek said that his bodyguard's Grandmaster aura instantly flared. Meek's business mind skill coming into play yet again at this time. Although he won't fight, after they kill Anthony, his bodyguard can at least fight them and kill some of them, making them to bend to his will and have no choice than to give up some rewards. If all of them were alive at that time, that is. This was what Meek had in mind when he made that proposal. And he was sure that they too had this thought in mind, as anything could happen on a battlefield. In an event where Anthony decided to drag out the battle and exhausting their mana and stamina, Meek could just decide to slaughter them like dogs after that. They won't make a bet that they could finish off Anthony immediately without exhausting their mana and stamina, as a battlefield was ever-changing. So, they could only compromise and allow Meek have some reward from Anthony's corpse, but not the reward for assassination. Meek smiled as his plan had worked out perfectly. This way, if the team succeeded, Meek would still reap rewards, and then even if they all fail and Anthony wipes them out, he would still be alive since he didn't interfere in the fight. So his life is the reward. Therefore, he wins in whichever path blooms into reality. Zane snorted and said with a stern voice, "We will all have to assign a mana contract." Others also nodded, as Meek what just said has caused a problem with the amount of assassination reward. Who is to say that even Chica won't wipe out all of them in order to keep the reward for himself? Although Chica couldn't take on all of them at the same time, there were many ways to kill someone without even lifting a finger. So they all signed a mana contract that made them unable to betray one another from this moment on. Of course, only an aspect to the assassination and not their entire lives. The only requirement for a mana contract was the ability to wield mana, and that's all. So even a newly awakened F-ranker can sign a mana contract. In order to use a mana contract, all you have to do is will it, and a blank sheet of paper would materialize in front of you. And with a thought, all your thoughts would appear on the paper, which would be signed in your name. Of course, others have tried to falsify their names or sign others' names on a mana contract and suffer the consequences. So during any mana contract signing, people only have to look out for loopholes and wordplay that is on the mana contract. After signing the mana contract, Meek stood up and left as he had nothing left to do there. This was how cruel this world was. One minute they were all laughing and teasing one another, and the next they were planning an assassination and keeping one another in check. If people who have known themselves for thousands of years can betray each other, what would you say about someone you didn't even know and only met like a few weeks ago, and met on a mission at that? This assassination mission was no different than breathing to them. It didn't even spark any emotion other than joy for the money that was about to come. In this world, many people still don't fully trust those who are bound by mana contract with no loopholes. The next day, we will be leaving today, huh? Anthony thought as he sat down sipping on his juice as he looked outside. Anthony didn't really have fun within these 2 days' stay, so he wasn't really bothered about leaving. He looked at the time and saw it was 1 p.m. He then stood up and went to have a bath as they were supposed to leave by 2 p.m. After he was done with everything, he stepped out of his room and walked to the elevator and was stunned as he saw the rest were already waiting for him by the elevator. He smiled at them and greeted all of them as they stepped into the elevator together. They all got to the clerk and checked out of the hotel. The valet drove their cars to the front and gave them all their keys with a slight bow. Anthony accepted his key but didn't enter his own car. Rather, he waved his hand and his car disappeared from sight. The crew looked at him, wondering what he was doing. Anthony walked up to Clara and Zara and said with a smile on his face, "I would love to ride with both of you if it's okay." Both girls were stunned as they heard Anthony's request. He has finally fallen for our charm. They both thought at the same time, as Anthony hadn't even cast them a glance since they started the journey. And truly Anthony had fallen for their charm. Since seeing their beauty, Anthony has decided to get close to them and crown the both of them as first members to his harem. Although Zara's lie detection skill could be troublesome, Anthony already developed a skill yesterday to counter any type of lie detection skill, to the extent that even if he tells the truth and he wants you to detect it as a lie, you would detect it as a lie without even knowing your own skill was interfered with. With Anthony's talent, developing such skill was no different than breathing to him. As for him having a lie detection skill, Anthony's all-seeing eyes could see through such simple things. Seeing this scene, the others could help but laugh. Anthony saw them laughing, but didn't know why they were laughing, so he just ignored them. But how could he know they were laughing at him? This isn't limp or special. Imagine falling for someone who plans to kill you and take away all your possession. So they were laughing at Anthony's situation. Although normally Anthony would have sensed that someone wanted to kill him. But this time he couldn't, as there wasn't any killing intent or change in atmosphere or emotion or anything. If not, Anthony's sense dome would have picked it already. Everything was as normal as it could be because to them, this situation didn't warrant any emotion as they have been in this type of situation way more times than they have lived. So to them, it was just another day, just another mission, no personal vendetta or grudge. Everyone entered their cars, and they all set off, but this time Meek and his bodyguard didn't use the van as the van was just for securing the Dragon Heart. They drove a normal car like the rest this time. As they drove, Anthony spent time flirting and trying to deepen his bond with Zara and Clara. Anthony won't be getting any harem throughout this novel, but he would be having desire for it once in a while like right now. These were his first members of his harem, so he naturally had to take good care of them. And just like that, 5 days went by on their journey back to City M. Although this time, they were also attacked. They weren't attacked crazily like before. Before, every monsters wanted the Dragon Heart, but this time they didn't have it on them anymore. So the monsters that attacked only made a move cause they saw them as meat. Of course, the team didn't touch any of these monsters. They allowed Anthony to take care of them all by himself. They did this to allow him waste more mana from his reserve. Although it wasn't much, at least it was something. Also, Anthony was casting flashy spells to dazzle the beauties he was trying to impress, so he could further bring them to his harem. Seeing all this, Meek didn't know whether to feel happy or sad. Deep down, he wanted a third option to bloom into reality. But the possibility of that was no different than a god descending into Blue Planet. Though this third option possibility was abysmal, it was the most rewarding. And what's the third option? Mutual destruction. Meek saw a path in which both parties ended up dead without any winner, making him the sole winner by default. A path where he gets everything. A path where he takes all loot on everyone's corpse and also still gets the assassination mission payout at the same time. Such a path was the most rewarding of all. This is why he is feeling somewhat sad right now, because if Anthony wastes all his mana reserve, Anthony won't have any mana left to fight to mutual destruction. Too bad I can at least help by reducing the mana he spends. Meek thought in dilemma, as the mana contract explicitly stated he can't intervene in any way or form. Meek wasn't worried about his safely on his way back to City M in case of mutual destruction. He wasn't with the Dragon Heart anymore, so the monsters coming at them was easy to fend off. Even if something big should step out, he can send out his bodyguard to handle it, or better still use his life-saving trump cards to escape if his bodyguard couldn't handle it. So Meek was really prepared for anything and was sure to reap rewards. 3 days later, the car at the forefront suddenly stopped. Once it stopped, everyone also stopped. Everyone came down from their cars and went on to stretch their legs as they had been driving for 8 days. But this time, it was more than just stretching of the leg or any other part of the body. Anthony didn't need to stretch, as his beginning of all things physique always kept him in optimal condition, even if he doesn't move for 10 years. So he just stood far away from others and waited for them as he gazed at the sky. But as he gazed at the sky and clouds, he suddenly felt some familiar presence surrounding him and getting closer. Although they didn't emit any killing intent, their weapons were drawn at this moment, as even a fool could tell what was happening. They all stood in silence, looking at Anthony while being ready to make a move. Anthony looked at them with an expressionless face. He didn't bother asking why, and any useless cliché questions like, "Why are you doing this?" What are the bonds and friendship we formed over the past weeks, and all those crap as he knew what kind of world he reincarnated in. At the end of it all, it still came to this, Anthony said as he sighed. You sound like you already expected this. Amos asked with a smile, like he wasn't about to kill Anthony. Aren't assassinations during missions the norm? There's nothing to be surprised about. Anthony replied, Amos, as he chuckled. If you saw this coming, why didn't you run away or hide? You aren't delusional enough to think you can take on all of us. Zane said, as channeled mana, and was ready to cast a spell at a moment's notice. Anthony didn't reply him, as he wasn't here to answer anybody's thoughts. Anthony turned his head to another direction high up in the sky. His gaze met Meek's and his bodyguards. Aren't you going to join the party and have some fun with us? Anthony asked in a low tone, as he was sure Meek could hear him just fine. Meek, hearing Anthony's question, smiled and replied, This has nothing to do with me or my bodyguard. We won't interfere in this matter. Anything that happens is between you all. Anthony kept his gaze on Meek for a second. Then he smiled and nodded. He turned his gaze to Clara and Zara and sighed in thought. There goes my harem and effort. Sadness flashed his eyes for a split second before disappearing. With the air and aura around Anthony still as carefree and laid back as ever, he said, Let's get this show over with, shall we? Amos was the first to move with his sword, ever so confident in his attack and happy about the loot and payment. Mana moved swiftly and gathered on Amos' sword as he appeared in front of Anthony and raised his sword high up in the sky, then sloshed down as if trying to split Anthony in perfect half. Amos' sword technique, cut of boredom. The sword descended upon Anthony with speed and power, and Anthony, not even moving at all as the sword came closer and closer to his head, made Amos smile and think that Anthony was just a mage and was just fooling around with the katana hanging on his waist. Anthony saw the attack coming, ever so slow, ever so bored. Anthony just took a step to the right at the last second and dodged with the most minimal movement befitting a veteran. The sword cut through the air and space. Immediately Anthony dodged and landed on the ground instantly, casting a resounding explosion that tore the entire ground in half within a 2-kilometer radius. BLM. The ground shook as dust and debris rose up, but no blood was splattered and moved in tandem with it. Amos became alert, seeing that his attack failed, and instantly took a step back. As the dust cleared, Anthony's figure came on full display again. Not even a speck of dust from Amos' destruction could be found on his body. Clara instantly moved with her magic as she waved her hands as he casted a spell showcasing her proficiency. Wind magic, Gale Blade. Mana surged instantly together with the wind element as they mixed together and formed 100 blades that instantly rained down from the sky, all focusing on one target. Anthony saw the attack coming towards him, but didn't move as all blades instantly stopped in front of him. Clara frowned as she felt a powerful, unknown force forcefully stopping her attack and preventing it from moving. She channeled more mana as she tried to control her blades, but before she could control them, the blades instantly shattered and dissipated. Before Anthony could say anything, Chica materialized behind Anthony, and he thrust out his spear with a strong force and immense speed and accuracy. Swish! Anthony didn't bother dodging and still stood in place. As the spear moved closer, Chica felt his speed slowing down continuously until it stopped in front of Anthony. It's the same way he stopped the wind blade attack. Chica thought as he instantly moved out the way, as he wasn't sure what Anthony was doing that made him block 2 attacks in succession without moving a muscle. The rest of the group also frowned when they saw this happen. 3 continuous attacks, but none landed and were dodged with minimum efforts. Although this wasn't even a fraction of their power or their true ability, it was still surprising. They initially didn't have any plan or ways to fight Anthony, as this was a 5 versus 1 fight. There was no need to make any plans, and that too for someone without their trump card, the so-called mana reservoir. Anthony, it seems you indeed have little to no mana at all in your mana reservoir artifact, Zara said with a smile as she looked at Anthony like he was a dead man. I don't want to hurt your handsome face. Just commit suicide and end your suffering with minimal pain. There is no way you win this. I'm sure you know this, that's why you aren't using the mana in your core, as you're trying to save up and not spend unnecessarily. Zara said again with a smile and a flash of lust that went through her eyes and disappeared. Anthony just sighed while shaking his head and said in reply, I don't know why people talk too much during a battle. If you want what I have on me, why waste your saliva and make your salivatory glands work overtime? At the end of the day, you're just an old cow trying to eat some young and fresh green grass. The moment the last few words left Anthony's mouth, the smile on Clara and Zara's face disappeared. Anthony just touched the reverse scale of all women in existence, age. Although Anthony didn't say anything to Clara or insult her, Clara was a woman, and secondly, she was Zara's sister. She had the right to be proportionally angry at Anthony. Zara and Clara's face instantly turned sour, and they both became angry. Their master rank aura instantly flared up at this moment as killing intent seeped out of their body. The atmosphere bent to their presence, and beasts in the area instantly moved out of the way. Those at the master rank and higher decided to watch a good show. Zara turned to Amos and his group and said in a low, cold tone, laced with killing intent, "Do not interfere." Amos frowned as he heard this. Although he knew that the reserve scale of women was their age and was a forbidden topic that shouldn't be touched or spoken about, he couldn't just agree to what Zara just said. The mana reservoir artifact was meant to go to whoever put in the most effort. Now if Zara and Clara fights Anthony alone, it would naturally go to them, so he couldn't agree to this. Are you trying to go against the agreement we had? Although we are bound by a mana contract that says we can't betray one another, that doesn't mean I can't attack you right now, as what I'm doing isn't betrayal. Amos said in a reply as he looked at Zara and Clara and refused to agree to such a demand. You're just faking your anger and trying to use this as an opportunity to put in the most effort. Zane's voice sounded from behind Anthony as he stared at the sisters. Zara's killing intent increased again and continued skyrocketing as it was sent to Anthony and Amos at the same time. We can decide who gets the artifact another way. Although the contract spoke about betrayal, I can also kill you on the spot since I didn't kill you in regard to our business, but a personal matter. Zara's voice sounded again, but colder this time, as she was indeed ready to make a move against Amos. Her anger clouding her judgment at this moment as Anthony touched her time bomb, and it indeed exploded. This was a sort of a loophole in their mana contract. Although they couldn't betray one another, this was only in regards to the assassination mission and nothing else. If right now Zara and Clara decided to attack Amos and his group, this isn't about the assassination anymore, but a personal matter. They all knew this loophole existed in the contract, but didn't bother covering it as they didn't know each other outside this mission. So it wasn't really a loophole, but an unspoken understanding between one another. As Amos was about to reply Zara, a thought went through his mind. What if Anthony kills the both of them? This thought hung in there for a second. If this happens, he would get the reservoir for himself. Amos smiled, then replied Zara. I agree then. Immediately Amos said this. He shot into the sky and went to stand near Meek so they could watch the show together. Zane and Chica didn't know what Amos was thinking or why he agreed. They could only grumble and follow behind him as he flew. Anthony sighed in defeat. He really wanted them to fight together. He anticipated such a match as he saw the two groups bickering. Too bad Amos is just a spineless coward. Such a good show would have been a good sight to behold. Anthony thought as he sighed. Zara and Clara turned their fiery gaze to Anthony and said at the same time. This just became personal. Zara instantly went into action as she really wanted to kill Anthony on the spot. Wood magic, mana zone, great Tor forest. Massive amount of mana surged with huge momentum as all mana within a 3 kilometers radius moved instantly as trees and roots started growing and coming up from the ground and went after Anthony. Within 3 seconds, 3 kilometer radius instantly turned into a forest as thick trees grew one after another. Slam boom asterisk asterisk asterisk. All roots started slamming Anthony like they all had a life in them. Anthony immediately moved and started dodging every slam and slap that came his way from the tree roots. Seeing Anthony dodging everything, Zara controlled mana again, and the roots turned into 2 hands that instantly rushed at Anthony from the sides, and instantly collapsed together. BAMM. Space shook as the two wooden hands collided with each other. But Anthony wasn't in between those hands, as they weren't fast enough to catch him. He stood at the tip of the fingers while looking at Zara directly. Anthony looked at Zara with a playful smile. Then he instantly disappeared from his position. He appeared beside Zara and sent out a kick to her pretty face. Zara, who had her mana zone active, instantly sensed movement beside her. Normally, she won't be able to keep up with this kind of speed, but the perks that came with mana zone made it possible. She instantly activated her escape spell with no delay at all. Would magic would barter. She instantly disappeared as soon as she casted the spell, and a wood appeared in her place. Bam! Anthony's foot connected with the wood, and it was shattered on impact with no chance of resisting. Zara watched from the place she appeared in. She knew that if that attack landed on her head, it would burst open. Such a vicious man. TSK. Anthony turned his head to her direction, then smiled evilly. Suddenly, a blue flame lit up from Anthony's feet as the tree he stood on was instantly set ablaze. Anthony increased the intensity and covered the entire 3 kilometers radius. Blue flames spread out under Anthony's control and threatened to devour the entire forest Zara had created. As the flames rushed towards Zara, another spell came in place. Water magic, aqua curtain. Water suddenly effluxed from nowhere and covered Zara in order to protect her from the flames. But it was still futile. As soon as the blue flames touched the water barrier, it devoured it without too much time. But by the time the blue flames finished devouring the water barrier, Zara escaped using that time frame. What the hell are those flames? Zara exclaimed as she continued flying backwards to avoid the blue flames. Anthony didn't reply them verbally, but with an attack of his own. Mana flowed out of his body as he moved to attack. The atmosphere suddenly changed as lightning crackled and moved together. Lightning magic, Giga Descent. A thick purple lightning instantly appeared before everyone. The force it carried showed it bestows destruction upon touch. The atmosphere trembled vigorously as everywhere glowed as the lightning descended upon everything. Crackling sound erupted as lightning moved. Crackly zizzly asterisk 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 BRRR asterisk asterisk. Zara and Clara, seeing the lightning approaching them instantly, went into their defensive as they casted their spells in rapid successions. Water magic, Aqua Aegis. Huge amount of water instantly spout out instantly as mana gushed out of Clara's body. The water moved and formed a huge shield that covered her and Zara. Zara also made her own move without pause. Wood magic, Boskage Blanket. Wood instantly appeared and wrapped around the water barrier, further bolstering their defense. As soon as they were done with their defense, lightning instantly descended. BOM. Everything glowed white for a split second before a calamitous destruction followed up. Space collapsed in itself as lightning bombarded everything within sight. Crackly BRRTR asterisk sizzle asterisk asterisk boom asterisk asterisk. Madness rained down everywhere as anything in the lightning's path instantly met its end. Everywhere shook with high intensity as lightning ran through everything. Trees were uprooted upon impact and were set ablaze immediately. Mountains shattered into smaller pieces that were still lit up by lightning and charred. As soon as Zara's wood barrier came in contact with the lightning attack, it didn't even last for a moment and was instantly ripped apart. Then, as the lightning touched the water barrier, it ran through it frantically and ripped apart whatever held it together. Clara pushed more mana into her barrier desperately, trying to hold it together. But at last, the barrier still crumbled up under repeated pressure. As the barrier collapsed, lightning immediately hit the both of them. Boom SRZZ asterisk asterisk asterisk. Lightning ran throughout their body as their body convulsed constantly. Their bodies continued to spasms as the lightning didn't look like it was going to end anytime soon. The armor on their body trying so hard to reduce the amount of damage they both received, but even the armor gave out under the pressure. Official. Zara, gritting her teeth as they clattered together as she spasmed, grabbed Clara's hand and casted her spell. Wood magic, dual wood barter. Both her and Clara instantly disappeared from their place and appeared in another location. Their body continued twitching and shaking uncontrollably as they tried to keep themselves conscious and aware. Small streaks of lightning still flashed the atmosphere and environment as the aftermath of the attack spoke in attestation to the destruction granted upon everything on its path. Clara and Zara had blood all over their body as the armor couldn't bear all the impact. Blood trickled from all 7 orifices present on their body, their skin torn apart and blood oozing out from every injury they had. Their breathing haggard as they were only saved by their enhanced vitality, which increases in correspondence to their mana rank and other factors. They both channeled mana into their space rings in order to bring out potions from their rings and heal themselves. But how could Anthony allow this? Although he would love to have a fun fight with people, these two are too weak to excite him. As both Clara and Zara channeled their mana, their minds instantly went blank. What is going on? They both thought as their space rings refused to work. Come on, you're veteran adventurers, you know that people don't allow their enemies to get back on their feet, right? Anthony's voice sounded. They looked ahead and saw him smiling. Anthony had controlled space and sealed off their space rings, but they didn't know how he did it since they didn't know he possessed the space element. People who possess the space elements are extremely rare and not something adventurers and mercenaries could come in contact with. I wonder if you can survive another attack from that same spell. Clara's and Zara's faces instantly turned to horror as they heard what Anthony just said. Instead of going into defense again, they decided to go on the offense this time. Wood magic, poisonous plant of doom. Plants quickly sprout and spread out as they all bloomed and instantly sprayed out poisonous gas out in the air, which covered an entire kilometer. The poison moved into Anthony's body through his body pores and orifices, but it was all useless as Anthony was immune to all poison due to the presence of the poison body. The poison covered up everyone's sight as they visually lost sight of Anthony as the poison covered him up. Before Zara could even get a breather, she saw a figure flashing into the sky. He stood unaffected by such useless poison. How? Zara thought as she saw Anthony, who was still fine as ever. As Anthony moved into the sky, he didn't go too far before Clara intercepted. Water magic, water dragon. Water materialized again and condensed to form a huge water dragon. The dragon instantly shot towards Anthony and opened its mouth and fired a huge high-pressure water beam from its mouth. As the beam got closer and closer towards Anthony, it suddenly turned into mist. Even the water dragon also turned to mist as Anthony took control over the spell and canceled it out. Anthony stood on the air and said, "Sigh, what a waste of time. The fight has become too boring. What a waste of chapter. I'm sure the readers feel bored also." Everyone's faces turned strange as they couldn't understand what Anthony's words. Well, it doesn't matter, just die. As Anthony was about to end their lives, 3 streaks of light instantly crossed a large distance in the sky and landed in front of Clara and Zara. Boom! Dust rose up and obstructed Anthony's view, but he knew who just arrived. It was Amos, Zane, and Chica. They all looked at Anthony with fierceness in their eyes. Whoa! It seems the author is really intending on dragging this fight to the next chapter. Anthony said as he looked at them, surprised they interfered after leaving initially. Ding? Says there is no author or chapter or any readers here. There is no higher being, as he is the highest point of existence. You should hurry up and entertain him. There might be a reward waiting for you. When Anthony saw this, he could only click his tongue. Really knows how to bait him. Amos didn't interfere earlier since he wanted Anthony to kill Zara and Clara, therefore also tiring himself out in the process. So then he could swoop in and kill the half-dead Anthony and reap the rewards. But right from the start, he could see how Anthony toyed with Zara and Clara. If Zara and Clara died, it didn't make any difference to Anthony since Anthony toyed with them. So he decided to interfere and save them so they could work together and reduce the pressure he would receive when facing Anthony. Amos gave potions he already took out from his space rings to Clara and Zara and allowed them to heal their injuries. Since Anthony sealed their space rings somehow, he decided to take out his potions from his space rings before Anthony seals his off like he did to the sisters. Anthony just stood there watching as both sisters healed, their skins moving and healing at a rapid pace, their mana regenerating back as they drank a mana potion. No matter how they healed or got prepared, he knew it made no difference, so he just allows it. The girls also changed their armors as the lightning attack tore it apart like a piece of paper. As they were done, everyone set their sights on Anthony as they all unleashed their auras together, trying to pressure Anthony into kneeling or at least stagger. But Anthony remained unfazed by these mere children games. Amos and Chica stood at the front while the mages remained behind. "Support us from behind," Amos and Chica said before they blurred out of existence as the floor beneath their feet cracked into a web-like shape as it couldn't support their speed. Amos arrived first, and he swung his sword brutally and viciously. Anthony unsheathed his sword as the sound of his sword sliding against the sheath echoed across the battlefield. Clang! Metal met metal as Anthony blocked Amos' attack, but another one arrived from the side. Anthony shifted the balance on his sword and redirected Amos' sword to the side in order to block the incoming spear. Clink! Spark flew off as he blocked the spear, but Chica was just not done yet. Aura quickly lit up Chica's spear as he thrust forward 1,000,000 times with blitzing speed. The air pressure folded as Chica displayed his skill and techniques for the first time. Chica's spear technique, unending thrust. As Chica's spear moved forward and retracted continuously, wind barrier cracked and broke down repeatedly as each thrust went straight for Anthony's body, threatening to take his life out of his hands. Seeing the attacks coming from different directions and in multitudes, Anthony responded effortlessly as his own aura instantly danced around his katana as he moved in reply. Endless technique, katana series, constant flow. Anthony's katana slash instantly met all spear thrust as sparks upon sparks were sent out as the katana and spear met head-on. Each attack unrelenting as they each vied to come out on top. Clank, clink, asterisk, asterisk, boom, asterisk, asterisk. Explosion resounded as their attacks bounced off each other and nullified one another. The terrain changed as everything was brought down by the aura constantly flying out. Cavities instantly formed everywhere as a quake was released throughout the battlefield. Amos, who was in close proximity, also shot into the sky while defending with his aura as he understood his teammate, Chica, better than anyone. After the initial wreckage calmed down for a split second, Amos attacked in that split second as he wasn't ready to miss his prey. But this time, he attacked with a fierce aura that waved out of his body, fire surging as it bent to his will. His sword fell from the sky onto earth akin to the blessing of a god. Amos' sword technique, fire type, cut a boredom. Anthony, still holding off Chica, picked up a sneaky attacker coming from the sky. Anthony's leg instantly became hazy as he lifted it off the ground with a speed faster than anything Chica has witnessed. Before Chica could react, a sense of touch was displayed on his chest before it was being sent out throughout the body. Boom! Chica's chest quickly sank in as a foothill connected with it. Chica was sent flying backwards as he couldn't even register what just happened. He collided with trees and hills before he could stabilize himself and feel the pain cursing his body. Anthony, who already took care of Chica for the moment, turned to his sneaky attacker and served his own attack. Fire was ignited on Anthony's katana as it intertwined with the already present aura as they blended perfectly under Anthony's great control. Anthony raised his sword and swung it upwards and above his shoulder to meet Amos' sword. Endless technique, katana series, raising swing. Everywhere instantly went deadly quiet as a fierce red light followed before a tremendous cacophony of explosion followed suit. BOMM. The earth shook at behest of their might. Everything was immediately set aballs. Fire met fire. Aura met aura. Crimson energy pulsed throughout the battlefield as everything was burned to ash. The trees remained no more as the fire enveloped everything in a 50 kilometers radius and the wind scattering their ashes. Novel bin exclusive content. Mountains that couldn't be reduced to ashes were no longer standing tall as everything was forced to kneel in front of absolute force. The stones melted, the ground cracked, the temperature and environment becoming so searing that people could mistake here for a volcano of some sort. Lavas formed as the fire that ran amok met the resilient earth that refused to fade out of existence. Smoke rose, and everything was blocked from almost everyone's sight. Wind, not daring to blow away the smoke, could only bend to the fire's will and make the fire burn with more rage and intensity. Sword marks skidded through the floor as the environment was no different than a molten chasm at the moment. The smoke cleared up, and Amos could be seen staring at Anthony with a gaze of fury as his killing intent had reached the peak. Amos' body had scratches on them, as the attack from Anthony had barely slipped through the aura covering his body, which boosted his defense. Blood trickled down the scratches present on Amos' body, but was instantly burned out of existence due to his aura. Anthony, still with his aloof demeanor, looked at Amos with an evil smirk and said, "Is this boredom sword attack all that you know between you and I? I am the bored one. So I hope you have something better for me. Well, I know you do." Anthony looked at Amos, waiting for his reply. Amos, with a cold look on his face, plainly said, "It seems I have to take this seriously. Rejoice, as you will be the first person outside my brothers to see my real sword technique. You have earned this much." The atmosphere suddenly turned strange as soon as Amos was done speaking. The aura on Amos' sword changed as it became even fiercer as Amos increased the intensity. Then fire dissipated for a moment. The already scorching atmosphere instantly became even hotter, like it wanted to crumble everything out of existence. Fire then appeared again and moved to Amos' sword and interlaced with the already fierce aura, making things even more chaotic. Chica shot out of the place he was embedded and stood behind Amos. Blood flowed down his lips and nostrils, with some bones being broken due to Anthony's kick, which bypassed his armor. Chica's aura became even more ferocious as his eyes blazed and wished for blood. The surrounding trembling in their presence, as every single thing felt both their presence. The mages who were told to help became nothing but decorations, as they couldn't keep up with the speed and pace of the battle. Although they could keep up if they activated Mana Zone, but the Mana Zone acts with them as the center and spans a certain radius. Once that radius is left, Mana Zone is automatically turned off. This was a disadvantage of Mana Zone. It doesn't move places with the holder of skill. Even if you decide to leave your own zone, then get to another area and activate it again, you've already left a small window open for the enemy to attack you. And that window that was left open is all your enemy needs, so people hardly resort to this unless they know for sure they won't open any windows for their enemies. Anthony took in Amos' transformation. Chica's come back as nothing more than a grain of salt. He said to both of them with a smile, "This won't be one of those cliché scenes where a character suddenly becomes powerful due to another technique or whatever. Those rights are reserved for protagonists alone, and you sirs are nothing but just one-time characters." Anthony shook his head as he said this. Anthony, still as nonchalant as ever, still as carefree, still as unshaken. Then Amos smiled at Anthony's words as he understood what Anthony meant. But he won't trade words. He would trade Anthony's head for cash instead. Fire and aura surged under Amos' feet as he disappeared, leaving only an afterimage. Amos' leg technique. Movement type. Stance of happiness. As Amos disappeared, only thick fire footprints which burned the ground were left as he ran towards Anthony. His speed even faster than when he fought the silver ape. He lifted his sword and sent out slosses at Anthony as the grin on his face became wider. Amos' original sword technique. First page, flicker of happiness. Light flashed as Amos sent out a cross shape-like attack at Anthony, the same technique he used to kill the ape. But this time it was fierce, as the fire and aura itself wanted to taste the blood of their enemies. Chica suddenly appeared into existence, mysteriously keeping up Amos, whose battle strength just took a step. The fire surging in the atmosphere, not even affecting him one bit, as he crossed the distance and attacked with more power. Chica's spear technique. Rapid plunge. His spear spun frantically as he plunged at Anthony without any delay or wasted movements. These two brothers of the fire element attacked like madmen. Anthony shifted his balance as he saw the attack coming. He bent his knee forward slightly. The fire blazing on his sword earlier was instantly snuffed out as Anthony decided to use another element perfect for the moment. The surrounding around Anthony instantly paused, as if time itself halted for Anthony, waiting to see his brilliance. The atmosphere suddenly turned cold, as the hot temperature around Anthony instantly starting changing rapidly as temperature dropped continuously at an alarming rate. The ice element instantly flowed into Anthony's sword as aura eagerly accepted the element without any trouble. As they combined, the atmosphere became even colder as temperature continued dropping rapidly. As the two attacks reached Anthony, he immediately released his own attack and technique at the incoming attacks. Endless technique, katana series, frozen slash. Anthony's body instantly spun as he performed a complete and perfect 360 attack without a miss and beat. Ice bloomed majestically as it made an entrance under Anthony's sword control. The attacks barreled into one another as everything flashed white and red. Boom, swish, asterisk, 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 crack, asterisk, asterisk. Heat wave and cold wave blasted onto everything together as they erupted it all to destruction. Ice and fire fought over who would control the domain and temperature. Heat met cold. Fire met ice, each constantly going against each other as it turned from a battle of swords and spear to a battle of elements. Ice froze over anything it saw, fire melting the ice as it followed up. Two natural enemies rumbled against each other as the temperature shifted continuously. 1 second, it was scorching and everywhere felt hell-like with temperature building up. And the next, it was cold like hell froze over as thick white ice tore through everything and dropped the temperature. Space entered a non-stop phase of destruction and reconstruction. Storms congregated as firestorm tore through space, and ice storm also approached and laid waste to everything. Space could only quake and shudder at the disaster gifted to it. Thick black huge fumes rose, but didn't get far before ice interfered and snuffed it out. A hidden figure dashed through space as it approached Anthony, using the obstruction caused by the destruction as cover. Novel bin unofficial text. He stealthily appeared behind Anthony and sent flurry kicks at Anthony back with his leg speed and strength further boosted by his fire and aura. Amos leg technique. Attack type, Cupid kicks. Amos' right leg blurred with a ridiculous speed and strength, which he swung his leg at. Such speed, such control was remarkable. Anthony already sensed Amos coming before he even sent out the attack, as his sense dome made him aware of everything, coupled with his all-seeing eyes who could hide from Anthony's perception. Not even his family, who were powerhouses who subtly followed him while hiding, could hide from Anthony's eyes and perception. Anthony instantly turned and raised his own leg, which was covered in ice and aura, as he moved to counter Amos. Endless technique. Leg series, shutter kicks. Both their legs met mid-air as Amos kicked out 100 in the blink of an eye. But Anthony blocked all of it with his own kicks without difficulty 100 times. Papa asterisk 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 BAM asterisk 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 BAM asterisk asterisk. The force of their legs meeting shattered the sound barrier as the wind was pushed back. The ground where they both planted, a single foot deformed due to the weight of their attack. Spiderweb-like cracks spreading everywhere as dust rose up softly from the ground but didn't go above their knee level. Amos was instantly shocked as Anthony turned to block. But before he could come out of his shock, Anthony sent out another 100 kick as he didn't just deploy this technique for the first time just to block some kicks. Amos sent out 100 kicks. Anthony sent 200, the first 100 for blocking, the second 100 for attacking. Amos couldn't block on time as he didn't expect Anthony to block, let alone block and attack at the same time. Although the fire element and aura covered Amos and boosted his strength and defense, in front of Anthony, it was no different than a paper approaching fire. Amos couldn't defend on time before Anthony's leg coated in aura and ice slammed into various parts of his body 100 times with a ridiculous force. The aura and fire, unable to keep this monstrous attack at bay, instantly broke and was frozen over. Amos was instantly sent flying backwards as he crossed over 2,000 meters per second due to the force of the attack. Amos! Chica and Zane screamed as they knew that the force behind those kicks were enormous. Zane instantly shot towards Amos and caught him as he collided with the floor and Tress as he rolled like a rag doll. As Zane caught Amos, the force also made him skid on the ground due to impact. Zane's legs dug into the ground as he was pushed back a few hundred meters. Amos' battered body coiled into Zane's hands as he spat out liters of blood. His body colored red and brown from the injuries he just received from Anthony's attack. Bones reduced to mere fragments as some parts of his body caved in with some bent in a very wrong direction. Bruises scattered all over Amos' body, teeth missing, his jaw out of place as it just hanged low as the muscles barely held it in place. His left eye squashed to meat paste under Anthony's attack. His entire body was heavily disfigured as he couldn't even stand or speak at this moment. He was barely alive, his breath shallow as he struggled to breathe as his neck was also hit. Zane's eyes was bloodshot from anger. Seeing someone he worked with for centuries and cared for in this state instantly made him angry. But he knew now wasn't time to say anything, but the time to act fast. Water magic, healing aquatic cocoon. Water poured out and weaved around Amos' body before forming into a blue and beautiful cocoon while pulsing out a gentle and soft blue light. Although this was a healing spell, it was light years away from the real healing magic. The real healing magic like the healers use, or light users like Evelyn use can heal you in seconds or minutes, depending on your injury. But the spell Zane just used was not up to that level. Sure, it can heal small injuries fast, but when it comes to real injuries like amputation, it takes hours to regenerate the limb back. And with the way Amos' body was right now, he would need more than just hours. Zane knew his shallow healing magic can't heal Amos right now, but he used it to at least keep Amos alive and reduce the pains he was experiencing at the moment. Zane stayed near the water cocoon and constantly channeled his mana into it to cocoon to increase the healing speed. Chica also saw the details of Amos' body. His anger reached its peak. He ran towards Anthony while shouting, "You demon, I will kill you." Anthony looked at Chica running towards him and just smiled at him. Chica arrived in front of Anthony and swung his spear towards Anthony's neck with all the strength and anger in him. Reading here on Novel Bin, Anthony didn't defend, but just kept smiling as the spear came closer and closer toward his neck. And the next second, a head soared into the sky as blood followed it with the sound of a metal cutting through a flesh. Slice! The head rolled on the floor, followed by the sound of the body dropping to the floor. Thud! Chica, feeling his spear tearing and taking his opponent's head, with the feeling of blood against the spear, made him laugh for a second. Then tears flowed down his eyes. "Amos, I finally killed the beast that almost took your life." Chica cried as he said this. He seemed to find peace for a second as he finally killed the demon that almost took away his brother from this world. But the peace didn't last long as he heard a familiar voice sounding in another direction. "What are you crying about?" Chica turned to the familiar voice, but what he saw shocked him. He saw Anthony standing with his head on his neck, no blood, no dust, no sweat on his body. Anthony stood near a water cocoon that swirled around slowly and released a small light and healed who was inside. Chica instinctively turned backwards to see if there was a body behind him, as he was sure what he felt wasn't an illusion. And indeed, it was an illusion. There was a body there, just not Anthony's. And oh! Chica screamed as he recognized the body and head on the floor. The person he killed turned out to be Zane. When he attacked earlier out of anger after calling Anthony a demon. Anthony didn't bother defending because when the spear was about to slice off his head, he used space magic to swap his position in space with Zane. So the head flying in the air, the blood, the body on the ground were all Zane's. Anthony stood near the water cocoon and looked at it with a wicked smile. He placed his hand on the cocoon, and a blue flame instantly appeared and devoured the cocoon together with the Amos body. The flames left nothing of Amos. Not even his ashes were left out. Chica screamed at the top of his lungs as he just lost both of his brothers. "Why are you screaming? The death of your brothers won't give you any power boost through your sorrows and tears. Like I said earlier, you aren't the protagonist. You're just one-time characters, and that's all." Anthony's voice sounded in Chica's ears as he appeared mysteriously and stood beside him. Chica didn't know when and how Anthony appeared beside him and couldn't react due to being consumed by hatred and anger as he lost his brothers. Anthony didn't waste any more time as the same blue flames erupted and swallowed Chica whole before he could even react. There was no screaming or anything this time. Chica didn't struggle as it settled in his mind that resistance was truly futile. They had been sent on an impossible mission. No, they accepted it themselves as they were given an option to decline. Their greed didn't allow them see a declining option on the mission. It was a life-changing mission. Before the blue flames took out Chica completely, his eyes landed on Meek, who floated in the sky. Meek stood like had predicted everything that was going to happen and decided not to interfere regardless of what happened. The flames then devoured him as Chica disappeared from sight, only leaving the blue flames that burned continuously. And truly it was a life-changing mission, just that it didn't change in the way they expected. The funniest thing about this entire ordeal was Anthony was immune to flame-based attacks due to his divine flame. He could literally stand without moving and all attacks would be useless on him, not even producing a single cut on his skin. Anthony was no different than their worst enemy. They never stood a chance. Every inch and corner of the battlefield became extremely silent at this moment. Those watching didn't even dare to breathe at this moment. The way Anthony handled the two brothers with ease, made one kill his own brother, then burned the rest with not even their ashes remaining. From the beginning to the end, there wasn't a single fraction possibility that they would win. Zara and Clara turned pale at this moment. Their anger about Anthony calling them old long disappeared and replaced with lingering death flags. They could feel it deep in their souls. They won't survive if they don't use any trump cards up their sleeves. Zara gritted her teeth in anger of what she was about to do because it was unsightly. She opened her mouth and regurgitated a scroll which she always hid in her stomach. She had this scroll saved for a life and death moment, or if she lost her space rings or something happens to it during a battle. Anthony took in this scene with his piercing gem like blue eyes as he looked at the scroll wondering what his was. Then Zara fused mana into the scroll for a moment, then tore it apart in half. Anthony didn't stop her. He wanted to see what this scroll would do. The next second, everywhere started shaking like the space itself was afraid of what was coming. The intensity of the shaking increasing with every second. The next second, from the clouds, a frightfully large meteorite started falling from above with speed that defied its eyes. The heat on the huge black rock instantly set everything on fire, as everything starting melt and burning before it could get close. Anthony looked at the meteorite in shock. He didn't know Zara had something like this up her sleeves. This was an attack above the Paragon rank. It was an attack at the King Mana rank. The next rank after the Paragon rank is the King Mana rank. Zara had dropped such an attack here as her life was on a life. But with such an attack being used, Anthony was sure that even Zara and Clara knew that they won't survive this. They were ready to die together with Anthony. Even Meek the businessman didn't see this coming at all. But Meek wasn't really bothered, although he felt death from the incoming attack. He brought out an artifact from his space ring that he was used as one of the payment for the Dragon Heart. He channeled mana into the artifact, and it glowed with a golden light before it released a barrier that encased Meek and his bodyguard. Meek knew he could survive this attack with this artifact shielding him. Meek smiled as the attack descended and thought to himself, at the end of it all, The third path blooms into reality. Who would have thought? Meek couldn't hold his smile at the thought of mutual destruction about to come to reality. This would make him the sole winner of it all. As for Anthony having something to defend with in order to escape his death fate, Meek didn't think about such things and just stared at the three figures as his eyes had flashes of greediness appear and disappear. As for running, a Paragon attack was already leagues ahead of the Grandmaster rank, and now a king was brought into the equation. There was no running. A king realm attack will king them before they can even get anywhere with their speed. The better option was to use everything on you to defend and try to survive. As the meteorite got closer and closer, death became brighter and brighter. Anthony stared at this attack as it got closer. He didn't have any change in expression. Hosted on MV_LE_MP_YR. But he marveled at such attack. With his all-seeing eyes, he could see a great detail about that attack. Since my opponent has decided to flex, I might as well flex also, Anthony thought as he saw the attack coming. He then smiled as he raised his right hand to the sky and used another magic he has never used in his life. Even now, he had many ways to bypass this crisis, but he decided to flex. Summoning magic, Primordial Behemoth. A magic circle appeared, then spun around for a second before it vanished. Then the trembling space trembled harder as it sensed something coming from far away. Space crashed inwardly as the void opened up, and a maddening aura seeped out of the space crack and flooded the world itself. Meek's shield was instantly shattered under the presence of such aura, like it was no different than a piece of paper. Then Meek dropped from the sky with speed akin to teleportation as he was pinned flat to the ground, unable to get up, as the pressure emitted from the unseen presence remained on everyone present. Even Zara and Clara suffered from the same situation. It was like gravity held them in place and didn't dare to let them stand up in fear that the presence might retaliate against it. The world itself trembled in space as it sensed something, an unknown entity, trying to step out of the portal. The world struggled to keep such a being away, and of course it was futile. Everyone throughout the world could feel the world trembling. Many didn't understand the world or anything about it, but they could understand the world at this very moment. Even those at the F rank could feel it. Those who didn't possess mana at this moment also understood the world as everyone shuddered together from fear of the unknown. Fear, disaster, obliteration. These were the feelings the world itself kept sending back to every single being on this planet. Various factions and people instantly sprang into action as they used various means to determine what was happening. But they all failed and even vomited blood. Some died on the spot for trying to spy into something that even the world couldn't handle. The stronger ones with stronger vitality paid a permanent price for their arrogance, though they got to keep their lives. The meteorite that was falling instantly shattered under the unseen behemoth's presence. The pieces that came about after shattering of the meteorite also crumpled to dust, with the fire disappearing like it never existed. The primordial behemoth was one of Anthony's sign-in reward over the years. The world couldn't stand or hold such a being's presence. So Anthony didn't actually summon it physically, but just opened a portal through summoning magic and let the being's presence flow out through the portal. Anthony looked at Clara and Zara as they bled profusely under the constant pressure that held them in place. He shook his head in pity and turned his face away. Immediately he did that. Both of them instantly turned to blood mist as they exploded like fireworks instantly under the pressure of the behemoth. Meek's body shook as he saw this. There was no artifact or anything that could save him from this monstrosity. He looked at Anthony with fear lingering in his eyes, wondering if Anthony would kill him next. Of all possible scenarios, he didn't foresee his own demise. Such power can't be held through scheming and thinking your way through things. In front of pure power, every scheme becomes null. Anthony canceled the summoning spell as the entire world returned to normal. But those who died stayed dead. Those who paid a permanent price for trying to spy didn't get any compensation. Anthony's footsteps echoed as he walked to Meek and his bodyguard as they stayed pinned to the ground. Anthony had already used authority of information to find out about the assassination and Meek's thoughts and everything. And Anthony complimented Meek from the bottom of his heart. A man who could still keep calm and think straight in the face of a life-changing offer was no ordinary person. Anthony stood in front of Meek as they both stared into each other's eyes, with different thoughts and emotions flashing the eyes. Anthony's eyes, still calm like a lake, looked at Meek calmly with no thoughts in his mind except the initial compliment. Meek still gazing at Anthony with various thoughts flashing his mind and eyes. He waited on the ground for Anthony's verdict. Even though the pressure has been lifted, Meek dared not stand up. He stayed on the ground and stared at Anthony. Even Meek's bodyguard didn't dare to get up and confront Anthony, as fear was still ever so present in his heart. The next second, space shook again as it broke like a glass as the void became visible. Anthony controlled the void and formed a barrier covering him, Meek and his bodyguard. Although Anthony's family had seen everything that happened from the day the mission begun till now, Anthony didn't hide anything just because they were watching. But what he wanted to do this time, he needed to hide it. Meek's face contorted as the void bent to Anthony's will. Various ways to die flashed Meek's mind, but he didn't speak and just kept watching. As the void shield formed everywhere became pitch black and gave a weird feeling, but weirdly Meek could still see. Anthony stood in front of the both of them and said calmly, "Normally I would kill you both, but don't worry, I won't, as I have nothing to cover up or anything like that." Normally Anthony would just kill these two people and be done with it. But if he kills Meek and his bodyguard, who would pay the 100 million Academy points for the reward? If Meek dies, it's already considered a mission failure, since you couldn't protect what you were meant to. Also, it is worthy to note that Meek's payment for the mission didn't actually reach 100 million points. It is the Academy that buffs up these rewards, also making the top 10 impossible mission even more dazzling and dangerous. So if Meek dies, although Anthony came back alive, all the stress he went through for a month would just become pointless. And most of all, it would consider a failed mission, thereby crumbling the invincible persona he has been cultivating since he entered the Academy. So for the sake of this, he needs Meek alive and well. But that doesn't mean he won't do something else entirely. He brought up a mana contract. He stated conditions that Meek or his bodyguard can't say anything about what happened here to anyone in whatever way or form. Anthony even added that he can't even say anything about him in his dreams or sleep. Anthony had read too many Chinese novels to know that some of them had the ability to enter people's dreams, then discuss with that person. Then he added that even if after Meek has died, and he was even reincarnated or a necromancer used his soul and turned him into an undead, Meek still won't be able to say anything about him. Anthony left no loopholes in the contract. After Meek signed the contract, he heaved a sigh of relief. "At least I won't die," Meek thought. Before he could drown in this new, peaceful feeling, Anthony placed his hands on Meek and his bodyguards' heads. Then he used his all-seeing eyes to manipulate both of their memories. Anthony left everything present as it is, but removed the part about his summoning magic and replaced with it something else entirely. Then he also added a memory fragment where they were also affected and felt the world's feelings at that time. Vol MP Year Chapter. Anthony nodded as soon as he was done, then removed his hands from their heads. They both felt nothing wrong at all. They didn't know why Anthony put his hands on their heads, but they didn't think much about it as a beast in a human skin was standing in front of them. Anthony manipulated their memories, because of those who can read minds can easily bypass the mana contract. This was the reason Anthony set up the Void Barrier, to hide his ability to change and manipulate memories. He didn't want to know how his family would react to this. This was a fearsome power on a certain scale. As Anthony was done manipulating their memories, he said to Meek, "Notify those guilds that took the mission that the mission is complete 3 days from now. Don't bother trying to increase the payment you set for the mission, or it might look suspicious." Anthony knew that Meek might leave here and decide to increase the limit of the original payment required for his services out of fear. This will raise a lot of eyebrows since the team was wiped out and only Anthony remained alive. Although he is strong and has his family to hold the sky if something happened, That doesn't mean he would spend his time listening to every fly buzz around or create unnecessary trouble and arrogance. These types of moves were left for arrogant young masters. Meek looked at Anthony confused when he heard what Anthony said. How am I supposed to notify those organizations if we haven't even gotten back to the city? Meek thought, as it would take more than 3 days to complete their journey. Anthony, seeing the confusion on Meek's face, just said, "Don't think too much about it." Then he waved his hand and space bent as a portal opened up directly under their feet. They both fell into the portal before they could even react. Anthony had sent them directly to City M using the portal. He removed the void barrier, and only he remained at this moment instead of 3. Anthony stood there for a minute without saying anything. He then sighed. It seems Mom, Dad, and Grandfather and Grandmother are trying to hide to the end, Anthony thought as he shook his head with a smile. He then looked in their direction, staring directly at them, and said, "Don't you think it's time to stop hiding? You all have been following me since the very beginning. You can come out now." Everywhere was silent for a moment, like Anthony was talking to no one in particular. Anthony didn't speak anymore and just looked at his parents. M_V, LE_MP, Wibe, our reader. Then a laugh could be heard. Ha 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 ha. As expected as my baby monster. Following the laughter, 5 people could be seen appearing out of from nowhere. Collins, Irene, Michael, Mitchell the butler. Mitchell had canceled her invisibility spell. How did you know? Mitchell asked as soon as she landed on the ground, as she wanted to know how Anthony found them. That was immediately and not even after. The Elemental Queen was someone the dragon and phoenix race recognized as an equal in magic despite their arrogance. And the spell she used to hide herself and others wasn't something just anyone could perceive or see through. And now a kid said he saw through her spell. Her pride as a mage was touched at this moment. Although the kid was her son, she still had her pride as a mage and genius. Let's just say, I have my ways, Mom, just like how you have your ways. And I sensed you right from the moment you appeared mid-air near me, then went invisible on the way to City M for the mission. Anthony replied without answering her question at all. Where are those other 2? Irene asked Anthony about Meek and his bodyguard, as at the moment Anthony created the void barrier, they couldn't see or hear or sense what was happening inside the barrier if Anthony didn't permit it. Did you kill them? Collins followed up with his own question. I didn't kill them. I just sent them back to City M, as there is no need to continue this tiring journey of driving. Anthony said to the both of them, as he didn't want to seem like a mindless killer or something. Irene and Collins both looked at each other for a split second, then nodded at Anthony. Are you injured in any way? Irene asked as she was ready to cast her healing spells if her grandson complained of anything in the slightest. Grandma, you watched everything that happened from the very first day. I'm sure you know I'm fine. There's no need to worry. Anthony replied as he hugged her. Did you find out who sent the anonymous assassination mission? Anthony asked everyone. They all shook their heads at the same time. Well, when a mission was first issued, we immediately looked into it, but we didn't find anything, so we just left it and didn't dig deeper, because at the end of the day, it's just another assassination attempt. As far as you are okay, there's nothing to worry about. Michael said as he laughed, feeling proud at this moment. But how did you know about the assassination? You weren't even there. Mitchell asked immediately. Mom, the same way I saw through your magic. That's how I know. The flimsy aura barrier that Amos used is commendable, but still useless against those with higher aura control or sort intent. Anthony replied plainly as he shook his head. Besides, we should leave here. I'm tired of constantly being on the move. Who knew driving for this long would be boring? Anthony said with exasperated expression on his face. Very well then, let's leave here, Mitchell said as she prepared to teleport everyone to their home in the human domain. I won't be joining you all, Colin said before Mitchell could teleport everyone. Where are you going, Gramps? Anthony asked as he was just seeing his family for the first time after a while. Well, I have other things to do. I will be back soon, Collins replied with a straight face. I also won't be following. I have to return to the battlefield and heal some people, Irene stated. Can't they wait? You were just seeing your grandson after quite some time. Anthony said as he acted as cute as he could to keep his grandparents from leaving. Well, you might not know this, but as a healer, my time is limited and I have a lot of people to attend to. I have been following you for over a month. I have deferred a lot of appointments. Besides, I have to make more money to prevent this family from going bankrupt with the way your father spends money. Sometimes I take favors instead of money. So if I don't heal people, I have a lot to lose. Irene said with a smile as she patted Anthony's head, ruffling his white hair. Anthony nodded his head and decided not to talk about it anymore. Although it was always said that healers have almost zero combat power and abilities. But people tend to forget that one of their most vulnerable moments is when a healer is healing them, as the healer has to inspect every single inch of the body. As a healer heals you, why can't the healer disrupt the process or perform the healing process in reverse, or use too much healing force and magic on a particular or multiple areas, thereby causing a lot of issues? And healers know that they don't really have fighting power as compared to the real fighters, so they tend to have more life-saving trump card up their skin than other. Then Irene walked and stood near Collins as they held hands together, and lightning crackled for a while around the both of them. "Don't miss us too much, boy," Collins said to Anthony. Immediately after saying that, Collins and Irene instantly disappeared like they weren't there to begin with. The lightning from earlier also disappeared like it was removed from existence. Even with the all-seeing eyes, Anthony couldn't follow such speed. He didn't even know the path they followed. The lightning element that was present earlier wasn't there to give any details. Such elemental control was at a level where Anthony hadn't reached. Such a speed was something Anthony couldn't match at this moment, even with the time element helping him. Such speed was akin to teleportation. Collins was heading to the Academy domain to talk to the dean. But before that, he had to take his wife, Irene, to the battlefield. Although Mitchell could just teleport her there, Collins won't pass up any chance to spend more time with his wife. Seeing the both of them disappear, Michael and Mitchell just shook their heads as they were already used to this. The butler was still standing at the side and hasn't spoken till now as he left the family to catch up with one another. Anthony walked up to him and greeted with a smile. "Hey, Uncle. It's been a while. How are you doing? Did you miss me?" "I'm good. I see that the young master has become powerful. I might need to seek protection soon." The butler joked, and everyone laughed. If anyone from the academy saw the way Anthony laughed and joked with his family, they would all be stupefied. The usual expressionless face was gone. The carefree aura around him was gone. The invincible aura around him was gone. The indifferent aura around him was gone. This time, he was just a kid who was happy to see his family. It was a new day. Anthony woke up to the sound of the leaves dancing to the tunes of the wind. The sun seemed too high up in the sky, so Anthony checked the time, and it was already 2 p.m. I really slept through the day. I guess moving through the forest felt like forever to me, Anthony thought as he jumped down his bed and stretched his body. He heard a knock on the door that requested permission before entry. "Enter," Anthony said in a low tone. The door squeaked open as a maid entered the room and bowed, while speaking with utmost respect in her voice. "The patriarch and madam request your immediate presence in the dining hall," the maid said as her head remained down without a change in expression. Anthony looked at the maid, who clearly stood at a rank above the king realm, but seemed too hidden to be noticed. Anthony didn't reply for a few seconds and just looked at her. The maid, sensing Anthony's gaze on her, didn't have any useless thoughts or feel disgusted. She remained unfazed, like the gaze meant nothing to her. She remained unflustered as the seconds passed. Of course, Anthony wasn't looking at her with any weird harem thoughts or anything. He just admired the way she hid the mana that flowed in her mana. The quantity and quality she possessed showed how much power and talent she held. But here, she was acting as a simple maid. After the few seconds went by, Anthony replied her with a single word. "Sure." The maid lifted her head this time as she was about to proceed and get ready for Anthony's bath and clothing and everything. But after she took the first step, she suddenly stopped as mana moved calmly around Anthony's body and bent to his will as his groggy and wet eyes and face instantly disappeared and was replaced by a focused man. His PJ instantly turned fluid like as it morphed into a suit with a knee-length coat that hung on his shoulders while flapping gently. Black hand gloves also morphed into existence as they covered Anthony's hands. The maid didn't miss any of the scene that just happened and just took like it was nothing with a straight face. Indeed, it was nothing. When people get to certain level in mana control, they can use mana to wash their bodies instead of taking a bath, making them stay fresh and clean 24 hours around the clock. Many people just bathed or ate and slept out a hobby, not that they needed to most of the time. As for the way Anthony switched clothes, that wasn't really normal, but with the amount of skills that exist in this world, the maid wasn't surprised if there was a skill for changing clothes, as there were numerous skills and even more useless ones. Normally, Anthony would have taken a bath and freshened up as he liked the feeling of water flowing down his skin in the shower. But since his family required his immediate presence, he couldn't just come later. Anthony told Meek to make the mission complete announcement in 3 days because he wanted to spend time with his parents. Ice element in the surrounding mixed with the mana under Anthony's control as a perfect ice mirror was formed in front of Anthony as he observed himself with all seriousness as his narcissistic personality kicked in and made him nearly forget the patriarch was waiting. The ice suddenly disappeared like time was reversed, and it was wiped out from existence. Lead the way. Anthony's voice echoed in the room as he broke out of his narcissistic personality temporarily. Yes, young master, the maid said as she walked to the dining hall, and Anthony trailed behind her with a pace step that seemed to hold the entire authority in the world itself. Every maid, guard, or any other personnel they met on the way to the dining hall all paused in their movements as they all bowed with utmost respect and trust. Anthony didn't reply any of them. His presence alone was enough for them. As they walked, they got to the dining hall that was closed by 2 doors that seemed to be made out of precious metals. You may enter, young master. The maid's voice sounded as she bowed yet again and gestured Anthony to step in. Anthony walked to the door as he used his mana to push it open and met the presence of 2 familiar people. Anthony walked to these familiar presents and sat down amongst them. Finally decided to wake up, Mitchell asked with a smile as the maids laid the food on the table. I was really tired, so I had to get some rest. Anthony replied as he prepared to eat. Come on, baby monster. You rested at that hotel. Besides, during the fight, you never took anyone seriously. So what's the exhaustion about, besides you sleep way too much and often for someone of your rank and power? Michael said as he looked at Anthony. And it's indeed true that Anthony sleeps way too much. This is because of his lazy side, which he can't even use, and is exclusive to the clones since they don't have to work. Any other people with confidence and talent to advance to a higher mana rank spends their time cultivating and just get the minimum sleep required to bring them back to peak condition. This also happens in the academy, which is why many of the students' cultivation shot through the roof. Due to their cultivation, they hardly sleep and spend it all on studying and cultivating. What has majorly caused this generation is special. So if they can stay a maximum of 7 days without sleep due to mana, they spend 5 to 6 days cultivating before they head to sleep, wake up, and repeat. But here Anthony was, once his body touches the bed, then he is immediately transported to the dreamland. He rests way too much at the smallest inconvenience or anything that makes him move his body. So he is still very lazy, but just not as lazy as his clone who does nothing at all. Anthony is this lazy because of his talent and cheats, if not. If others like Storm Rider finds out that Anthony actually sleeps a lot, he might just faint out of anger. But you can't truly say Anthony is lazy, because on the other hand, he could be the most hard-working as he spends years in the Divine Realm training continuously without stop. Even now, as he walks, talks, smiles, his thought compartments are always analyzing the information presented by his bloodline and physique. Of all thoughts compartment, only 10 are left free, the one responsible for the sign-in system. The remaining 9 were left by Anthony for any regular thoughts, which is basically his overthinking and narcissistic session. You won't understand the life of a genius like Novelbind Dad. If I don't sleep, when will others have the time to catch up? Anthony said in reply with a smirk on his lips. You aren't even the patriarch yet, and you're already challenging me for my position," Michael said in reply as his battle intent started seeping out little by little. Mitchell's voice cut through the battle intent like a thin paper as she spoke. "Don't scare our son." The battle intent disappeared as the smile on Michael's returned to normal. Then Mitchell turned to Anthony and said, "Now I understand why your father calls you baby monster." Anthony's face instantly turned sour. He could live with his father calling him a baby monster since that man had no hope. But his mother was another matter. He couldn't live with that. As they ate and discussed like a normal family, while laughing, the discussion suddenly reached a point Anthony saw coming. "So my baby monster, what are you hiding so deep inside? The last time I asked you, man, a rank you just showed me the mortal rank. But with what I saw these past few days, it sure wasn't the mortal rank. I wonder when my baby monster started lying and what more he is lying about." Michael said as he looked his son dead in the eyes and locked in as he waited a reply. He waited to know if his son would lie again. And if Anthony actually lies again, Michael would be disappointed. Of course, there are ways to know someone's rank and abilities, but would they work on Anthony? The best way to know someone's strength is to straight up attack them. Mitchell's eyes also turned to Anthony as she waited for a reply. Although she wasn't there when Anthony revealed his rank, she had heard about it as Michael bragged about his son to her like Anthony wasn't birthed by her. The atmosphere suddenly turned strange and icy as two pairs of eyes locked on Anthony. Anthony, seeing this, kept an expressionless face, but his mind ran various thoughts. He knew he kept a lot of things from his family, as he couldn't just wake up one morning and be like, "Hey, I'm a reincarnator. I took over your baby's body. Hope you don't mind, and you don't have to worry I'm not some old monster reincarnating." If something like that happened, he would be killed on the spot or imprisoned. He had to tell his parents something. At least he couldn't lie about this particular situation anymore. But he couldn't just tell them about everything. He might tell them any other thing, but his reincarnation and the system were out of the question. This was an unspoken rule amongst the reincarnator clan. Speaking on it was taboo. So he could talk about anything asides those two. Besides, it wasn't like even Michael or Mitchell didn't keep at least one thing from each other. Even if they didn't keep anything from the other, Anthony won't speak on his reincarnation or the system. He wasn't ready to bet on their love for him. All these thoughts took less than half a second due to thought acceleration skill. It is said that people's aura are based on their nature. So an aura was like how to describe someone without even knowing them. Although some people can manipulate and fake their aura, this wasn't their true aura and would pale in front of their main aura. So people usually faked it to achieve their motives or whatever they were plotting. But the strong and experienced could see through such a feeble facade. As soon as Michael was done speaking, Anthony sighed as he decided to flare his own aura to the utmost for the first time. An aura unbefitting of a 15-year-old kid instantly appeared. Boom! Space shook as an Anthony unrolled his aura. The plates and utensils they used to eat instantly broke apart and shattered. The table that held the plates were placed on, not even lasting longer than the plates, instantly followed, as everything was reduced to pieces. The air shook as it vibrated with high intensity and magnitude. The walls, ceiling, and ground caved in and cracked as Anthony's aura touched the floor. The windows chattered and rattled as they vibrated before they burst apart. The aura stood tall and could go head-to-head with the Paragon rankers, but the show of a peak master rank was evident in the aura. The aura showed immense force and control as it seemed to look down on everyone and everything with a detached look. Carefree, indifferent, invincible, aloof. The light element unintentionally moved as it mixed with mana and created an illusion together with the aura that made Anthony appear like he was sitting on a throne and gazed down on everything from the peak. Michael and Mitchell's gaze met Anthony's as they fell into the illusion for a split second before it shattered. But that split second made them feel like Anthony looked down on everyone and everything. Anthony seemed simply detached and prideful to speak to anyone lower than him and even above him. But this was just their misunderstanding. Anthony never looked down or even looked up to anyone. He simply has no thoughts about anyone's opinion on or about anything. Anthony just simply didn't care about anything. This made people always jump to the conclusion that he was prideful. But Anthony didn't bother to correct this, because he didn't care. Michael and Mitchell stared at Anthony's aura as they picked his peak master rank cultivation rank. What a monster! They both thought as their eyes flashed with various lights, but same thoughts. Deep down, they knew that if Anthony was another person's child from one of the 5 families, they won't hesitate to nip the child in the bud. Such talent was too much to be left alive. They now understood why Anthony kept his strength and everything under wraps. They thanked the stars Anthony wasn't a show-off or arrogant. This amount of talent has never existed, or rather, the history records. We have to protect him. We can't let him out of our sight. The other families won't let him live if they find out. Michael thought as he looked at Anthony, but a smile appeared on his face at the same time as 2 sides of him battled for dominance. The battle-crazy side wanted to leak Anthony's true mana rank and cause war and use then it as an excuse to wipe out everyone. The other side wanted to hide this fact and protect Anthony in order not to put him in danger due to the other side's recklessness. Anyone that sets their eyes on my son better be ready for hell. Mitchell thought. One thing was certain. Anyone who touched Anthony better be prepared. As novel binarious thoughts flashed their minds, the aura suddenly vanished as everywhere returned to normal. Well, at least the atmosphere, but not the surrounding, as the destruction caused by Anthony still remained. Michael and Mitchell didn't say anything after Anthony's reveal. They just kept quiet, and a loud silence descended upon the dining hall. The word baby monster couldn't cut it anymore at this point, the silence stiffening as it swallowed any sound that made a move here. After a while, a voice released a sound that silence dared not approach. "Ah, I expected nothing less from my son. You need to be at least strong to take over as patriarch," Michael said as he laughed in joy as he clung his stomach. "Who knew my baby would hide so deeply? Such talent would soon make you a world powerhouse. Like the butler said, we might have to seek protection from you soon." Mitchell's voice sounded as she smiled, genuinely happy for her son. "So, who do you want to battle first, your father or your mother?" As soon as the sentence was dropped, 2 thick battle intent instantly dropped on Anthony and tried to threaten him into selecting one of them. With such amount of battle intent, even someone who doesn't want to fight would be at least stimulated to take action. But how could Anthony's Emperor demeanor skill allow him to be manipulated like this? The skill that has always been active but automatically deactivates when Anthony is with his family instantly activated and burst forth with a higher momentum. The raging battle intent was deflected to the side by the Emperor demeanor skill. Anthony sat unfazed as his presence shifted from his usual child demeanor to that of a cosmic ruler as he looked at Michael and Mitchell and stated, "None. One word, one statement, one declaration, one utterance." The sudden change in demeanor made Anthony revert to when he looked down on everything and everyone. The aerosphere turned eerie and silent as the unknown hung in the air. None of them stepped back. None relented. None acquiesced as the air trembled and melted as none backed down. The battle intents were nothing more than mere breeze brushing past Anthony's face. The battle intents kept increasing as they saw Anthony resisting without any trouble. The grin on Michael's face getting wider and wider as he really wanted to test his son's limits on everything. He wanted to see where Anthony's battle prowess really stood. The fight during the mission was something Anthony could take care of with a wave of his hands, so Michael didn't really see anything there. But with the little he saw, he knew his son still had cards up his sleeves. He wanted to see him swing the sword. He wanted to see him move around. He wanted to see him jump, parry, attack. He wanted to see him adapt to unfavorable situations and battles. He wanted to see everything through his own eyes and senses. He wanted to see the amount of experience Anthony had gained through fighting. But Anthony didn't need to fight to acquire battle experience, since his skill already closed this gap. Michelle, while not a battle maniac like her husband, was a different breed when it comes to magic. To make the ever-so prideful dragons and phoenix to recognize you, you must make even the best genius look no different than the untalented ones. She also wanted to see how her son combined the elements with mana. She wanted to see how good his mana control is. She wanted to see him cast his best spell. She wanted to know how many elements Anthony could use. She wanted to know how many spells Anthony could cast at the same time. She wanted to know how many elements Anthony could manipulate at the same time. As all these feelings flowed and coursed through Mitchell and Michael's body, their battle intent burned brighter. They all stood at an impasse. Should they attack to satisfy their curiosity? The dining hall vibrated intensely, barely holding on under the trio's magnificent control. None of the guards rushed in thinking that someone had attacked, as they understood their patriarch and his wife. Everyone felt the sudden battle intent. But no one knew what was going on. No one sensed Anthony's aura because of his perfect control. Although the dining hall was barely left standing, not a single aura left that hall. Who knew if the demons or other races had a spy here? Even the other families must have spies here. You don't expect Michael and Mitchell, two world powerhouse, to go around signing a mana contract with every single maid or person that works in their estate or works for them. As both Michelle and Michael saw they weren't getting any upper hand here, they just decided to give up. The battle intent disappeared without a trace. Then they both smiled at Anthony, wondering how he survived that. Then Mitchell decided to change the topic to another thing she was curious about. So what is this mana reservoir artifact that everyone was after? Let me see it. She had also seen Anthony cast spells without any concern for his mana. She also came to the same conclusion like Meek, Amos, and the rest that Anthony possessed such an item. Mother, you really want to strip me of all my cards? Isn't that cruel? Anthony said as he looked at her. You don't have to worry. I too have a mana reservoir artifact. These types of artifacts aren't exactly rare. It's their capacity that makes people go crazy, just like yours. Anthony's expression changed into a surprised expression before it returned to normal. It made sense. His mother is a mage, so she should have something like that, as without mana a mage is basically useless. But warrior can't run out of aura, so they don't have this weakness, but their stamina is another matter entirely. Can I see the artifact? Anthony asked as he looked at his mother. But Mitchell didn't say anything and just replied with a playful smile that meant, if you don't want to show me yours, why should I show you mine? Anthony, understanding the look she gave him, could only give up. He couldn't just say he has infinite mana, right? This wasn't even a concept. He couldn't just say it out loud because he was curious of his mother's artifact. So how did cultivate so fast to the peak master rank? Michael asked Anthony. Anthony turned his gaze to his father and replied with a smirk. Have you forgotten about the fruit I gave you all, who said I didn't eat mine, and who said I didn't have something better than that? Michael immediately understood where Anthony was coming from. Even he who had a ridiculous mana rank and talent felt his cultivation soar. His talent strengthened, his physique strengthened, and now Anthony said he also had something better. Michael couldn't even begin to imagine the effects of this new fruit. He turned to Anthony and said with a smile, do you have another one? Father, your body hasn't even finished digesting and adapting to the one you ate, and you want to eat one with even better effects. Does Father have any death wish? Anthony said with a funny tone. Michael frowned, then decided to give up. He didn't ask about Anthony's foundation because he knew from his own cultivation that the fruit even strengthens already existing foundation. The day continued with them asking Anthony different questions, with Anthony either dodging the question or just saying they want to strip him naked. The days quickly went by, and it was already time to go back to the academy. Anthony sat on a chair as he drank his juice in anger as he spoke to the system. System, where's my reward? What reward? The system chimed in. System, you said I would be receiving a reward when I finish off Amos and his assassination group. I haven't gotten anything in the past 3 days. Are you cheating me now and taking up the reward for yourself? Anthony said as he clicked his tongue. He waited 3 days without any notification from his system. He had to ask by himself this time. Romulus, looking at the angry Anthony, shook his head and said, are you really expecting a reward for dealing with those ants? Anthony looked at Romulus and almost screamed out of anger. It's not that I expect rewards every time I deal with people. I never expected one in the first place, but the system sent a notification I would get one. Why bother telling me if I won't get any at all? Anthony said rapidly. If it was a reward that another person promised him, then failed to deliver, Anthony won't even bother talking about it again, because who is even richer than him? But this reward was promised by himself. And every reward that Guy is given was too good to pass up. It was always better than the last. Is it the nothingness cultivation technique? Or the divine secret realm with primordial mana together with time adjustments? Or his shadow soldier? Or is it the divine flame Romulus? Or the authority of information? Every single reward that was dished out by himself was too good to pass up for Anthony. He wouldn't let any of them slip by just like that without asking questions. Was definitely his golden goose that laid golden eggs, scratch that golden rewards for him. Even if he has a system to buy all things, he for sure knew his points were nowhere enough to even buy any of these rewards at the moment or even in nearest future, and the Shadow Soldier would be the cheapest. He dared not think of the rest. But now he found out he won't be getting any reward. The system was seriously trying to shortchange him. Ding. Says he has no rewards to give. He never promised a reward. He said there might be a reward. It was never promised. Anthony was stunned when he read this. Was? Really playing the word game with him. Does he have to start looking for loopholes every time? Says something. Ding. Says you shouldn't worry about such useless things. He won't bother playing word games with a mortal. Anthony heaved a sigh of relief. He didn't believe he could win in word games against, even if he used his scheming mind skill, was the one that even directly bestowed the skill to begin with. Ding. Says this is why he doesn't like child support or children in general. They throw a tantrum when they don't get something they like. Anthony read this and was rendered speechless. Was this why? Always denied him as a son. Was? Going to buy milk one day and never return? Was? Black, that's racist. Anthony spiraled off into his overthinking session. But the overthinking didn't last for long this time before Anthony came out of it. Anthony sighed and gave up. Since he won't be getting any reward, no need to think too much about it. What are you doing here, Dad? Anthony asked as the door opened, and Michael stepped in while carrying his sword on his waist. Can I visit my son anymore? Michael said as he walked and stood near the window and gazed outside. Anthony didn't reply and just gazed outside with Michael. They both stayed silent for a while before Michael spoke again. Don't you think you should graduate from the academy already? Anthony already saw this coming. I can't, Dad. I understand you want to see me fight at the front line, but right now I'm still just a kid with power. I want to enjoy some things before I jump into a cycle of bloodshed. Anthony replied without a change in expression or tone. Why should he graduate and head to the front line when he hasn't finished enjoying life? He had to enjoy this life to the fullest first starting with the academy. And the academy wasn't really that bad. School as a concept wasn't really bad, but it was not fun for those who find learning a hassle or couldn't understand anything no matter how it's taught. And for Anthony, a genius in every way, the school was no different than his own house. MVL_MPYR, original. Why should he graduate and start killing demons and whatnot? There are many powerhouses for that. Besides, Anthony saw a bigger picture. Everyone wanted to eradicate the demons, but Anthony saw something bigger. If the demons were wiped out, what then? Then the racial war would immediately start. Everyone would turn on one another without a second thought, as their collective enemy is gone. Some races like the dragons, titans, or phoenix, and so on won't really care because they have power to join such war. But what are the weaker races? Where does humanity land in all this? The answer was simple at the very bottom. They only had their numbers. Even if some lower races decides not to participate in the racial war, some higher races would still pressure them to join or scheme it into existence. Even if humanity wins the racial war and becomes the only race in the entire blue planet, what next? They would wage war on themselves, unlike the other races that are ruled by one person and family and are loyal to that family, like Dragon King or the Phoenix King or Elven Queen and more. These races ruled by one person and family, such that even if they win the racial war, the probability of a war occurring from within the same race drastically drops to 10%. So with the way Anthony saw it, the demon's presence was actually a good thing in many ways. Although many would argue with this and start listing hideous crimes that demons have committed, but what crime on that list has a human not done yet? So the motivation to eradicate the demons for the sake of a false sense of peace wasn't really in Anthony's mind. War was just another endless cycle. Just that the race being fought against was what changed and nothing more. Of course, if there was a hero who could wipe out the demon race and suppress the other races, or wipe them out too, thereby putting humanity at the peak of it all, Anthony won't stop him or her. He would clap from the sidelines happily.